Chapter 864. Mo Jiang didn't mind at all. She was just teasing the two of them. Zhong Yu and Song Yanqing prepared to go out to find someone. In the conversation just now, Zhong Yu said that there was a person called Uncle Yang in the village. He had lived in the village for a long time. When he was young, he called him Uncle Yang. He had seen him in the past few days. Uncle Yang was still there, and he seemed to be in good health. He was also one of the more famous people in the village. It would be better if they went to find him. However, Zhong Yu could only bring Song Yanqing. This Uncle Yang was a little strange. He didn't like to see women. Thus, only he and Song Yanqing could go. After they left, Qiao Jin rubbed his chin. He didn't understand Uncle Yang's strange habit. He still doesn't like to see women. Mo Jiang said, maybe he's gay. Qiao Jin turned to look at her. Mo Jiang didn't feel embarrassed at all. I've been here for so long. It's time for me to learn some modern knowledge. I'm a fast learner. Maybe I'm originally from this era. But she knew she wasn't. At least, Qiao Jin clearly told her that she had been resurrected. In addition, the people from the spirit group had also revealed some information. Mo Jiang knew that she might have come from thousands of years ago. She said this naturally, but Muzilian and Inshutian's eyelids twitched. This era. Qiao Jin said indifferently. Mo Jiang lost her memory. There are some things she can't remember clearly. Muzilian, this was the first time he had seen someone lose their memory. Wasn't this woman a celebrity? How could someone with amnesia be a celebrity? You had been quietly building blocks at the side. Muzilian couldn't hold it in anymore. He was afraid anyway, so he had to find something to distract himself. Where did this child come from? Qiao Jin, I picked her up. Muzilian. While they were having their daily conversations here, Qiao Jin's array formation allowed her to see some of the situation. Just because she couldn't go didn't mean that she couldn't see what Song Yanqing and the others were doing. When they went this time, Zhong Yu brought Song Yanqing to the house closest to the human-shaped mountain that they had mentioned earlier. It stood alone at the back of the mountain, surrounded by a bamboo forest. Walking in, one could even see a fence surrounding it. The scenery was not bad, but it looked too lonely. Moreover, it was surrounded by mountains and forests. The house was hidden in the mountains and forests, which made it seem too oppressive. When they arrived at the door was closed as expected. However, the sky was already bright. When they went over, an elderly man walked out of the door. He was very old, holding a cane, and there was an obvious cataract in his left eye. However, when he saw Zhong Yu and Song Yanqing, his expression changed. How did you get in? Zhong Yu and Song Yanqing immediately noticed this question. Zhong Yu immediately said, Uncle Yang, it's me. I'm Xiao Yu. Don't you remember? I came back this time to pay respects to my grandfather. Xiao Yu. Uncle Yang looked carefully and realized that it was really Zhong Yu. His expression softened, but he still asked in disbelief, Zhong Yu, when did you come back? Is this your friend? He pointed at Song Yanqing. Zhong Yu nodded. We came back 5 days ago. I even came to look for you, but your house wasn't open at that time. I thought you weren't home. Chapter 865. 5 days ago, Uncle Yang's expression changed drastically. In the end, his expression became a little complicated. After a long time, he actually let out a long sigh. Forget it, you guys come in. He walked over shakily with his walking stick and said, It's daytime now, those things won't appear. You guys are really lucky that you weren't sent in. His words were too obvious. Song Yanqing listened carefully and didn't know what to say. Zhong Yu timely asked, Uncle Yang, what are you talking about? Uncle Yang's cheeks twitched. Come in and talk. Zhong Yu and Song Yanqing nodded and walked in. Uncle Yang let them into the yard and pulled out a chair for them. His gaze fell on Song Yanqing and carefully sized him up, then said, "He came with you." Zhong Yu hesitated, but still said, "No, they just arrived this morning." Uncle Yang couldn't help but be shocked. He looked at Song Yanqing and carefully sized him up, as if he was completely shocked. Zhong Yu couldn't help but ask, "Uncle Yang, what's the reason?" He sat down and clenched his fist a little. "I'll be honest. When we came back 5 days ago, the people in the village ignored us. I still don't know why. You seem to be at home these few days, so why didn't you open the door when I came to find you?" "That's because we couldn't see you at all." Song Yanqing and Zhong Yu were a little speechless when Uncle Yang said this. After a while, Zhong Yu's eyes darkened and said, "Xiao Jin is right. The people in the village really couldn't see them. In other words, in these 5 days, it was like they were in 2 different worlds from the people in the village. They were in the same space, but the other party couldn't see or touch them." Uncle Yang carefully looked at Zhong Yu. "You don't seem very surprised. It seems that you must have felt something when you came in." Zhong Yu didn't say anything. Song Yanqing said warmly, "Uncle Yang, nice to meet you. My name is Song Yanqing. I'm Zhong Yu's friend. Maybe you don't understand, but I want to say that according to the outside information, someone in your village called the police a month ago. Then the news spread out that many people in the village died, but the people who were sent in all disappeared. That's why we came in. Looking at you, you obviously know that the world you live in is a bit strange. We're here to save you. You can tell us what you know so that we can make a more accurate judgment." Save. When Uncle Yang heard this, his expression became somewhat distressed. "What's there to save? Since the news has spread and you all know that many people have died, why does it seem that nothing has happened in the village after you came in?" "That's because we are already dead." Zhong Yu, Song Yanqing, to be honest, this matter was a little beyond one's imagination. It was even a little creepy. Zhong Yu was a little surprised, which was rare. But Uncle Yang was clearly fine and could even talk to him. If he was already dead, then why could they talk to the dead? Could it be that they were also dead? Zhong Yu felt that since Xiao Jin could come in, it meant that it was impossible. Maybe Uncle Yang's cognition was wrong. They didn't know what kind of world they were in. Chapter 866. Uncle Yang looked at them and showed a sad smile. "Look, you don't know anything. Zhong Yu, you shouldn't have come back. Since we didn't let you in, you just need to leave safely. Why did you break in?" Zhong Yu's face sank. "Uncle Yang, I don't understand." Uncle Yang sighed. "In 2 days, you will know. Things will start again. When the time comes, don't be surprised. If you want to go out, do as I say. Zhong Yu, the world you are in now is not the world you thought it was." Song Yanqing said, "Uncle Yang, when we came here, we found that the people in the village didn't dare to speak. They were afraid when they saw us. What's the reason?" Uncle Yang looked at Song Yanqing and said solemnly, "Because after 12 o'clock at night, monsters will appear in the village. As long as you make a sound, it will hear you. The monsters will disappear in the morning. We can't resist, so we can only keep quiet. Why are they afraid when they see you? That's because you shouldn't be able to come in." Suddenly, people from the outside appeared in this world. Naturally, the people in the village are afraid. Monsters. Zhong Yu's pupils shrank. Song Yanqing wasn't shocked. Because in his precognitive dream, this scene did appear. A huge monster with an axe was wandering in the village. Every night, it would appear in the village. As long as it encountered something that made a sound, it would chop it down with the axe. The people in the village lived in fear. Because if a person made a sound, they would be chopped to death by the axe. Are we really dead? Uncle Yang nodded. When we entered this world, we were already dead. But at least we can live in a way. If we are killed by it, we will disappear completely. Otherwise, why are the people in the village so afraid? At least we still exist in this world. We still have thoughts. If we are killed by that monster, we will be gone. Who wouldn't be afraid? Zhong Yu frowned. He didn't understand Uncle Yang's logic. Uncle Yang, how do you know that you are dead? You are clearly. Uncle Yang smiled. You won't understand even if I explain it to you. I know that I'm dead, so I definitely know. You'll understand in 2 days. Uncle Yang's words were vague, and he didn't want to say more. Song Yanqing and Zhong Yu couldn't do anything. They could only go back temporarily and tell the rest of the people what they heard. As for Qiao Jin, she already knew what had happened through the array formation. When she heard Uncle Yang's words, she also fell into deep thought. Although the rules were unreliable, the things they foretold were reliable. Why did it say that there was no danger here? Monsters would appear at night, and they would kill anything that made a sound. No matter how he looked at it, it was extremely dangerous. Well, if it's a formation spell have a spells a spell. After all, sorcerers and spiritualists had all kinds of strange abilities. Who knew what kind of world they would create? Of course, she didn't say anything. When Song Yanqing and Zhong Yu returned, the two of them told the people in the house what they had heard. T's ain't s have a tes have to, only Mo Jiang and Ah Ju, the children, remained calm. Chapter 867. They're all dead. What the hell? Musilian patted his face. No, I need to calm down. This was even more ridiculous than the Mountain of Rules. At least the Mountain of Rules clearly said that it was a fake world. As long as you finished the exam, you could live. Now, there were dead people in this world. They clearly told you that they were dead, but now they could communicate with living people normally. This was a serious challenge to any normal person's worldview. Mo Jiang looked at Qiao Jin. You can't see the problem. Qiao Jin shook his head. There are no traces of formations. I can only speculate that this is either a world created by a wizard, or it's a spiritual master. Because it didn't cover a large area, if a high-level spiritual master had enough ability, they could indeed create an imaginary world. The problem now was what this world was like, and what would happen, they didn't know. The original Jade Pond village definitely existed, but it was covered by this world. In other words, there were two situations now. There were still people alive in the real world in the village. After all, Zhong Yu grew up in this village. If there was a problem, he would have died long ago. The other situation was that the two worlds intersected with each other, and would appear in different timelines. But now it seemed that the latter was unlikely. According to the first situation, Qiao Jin speculated that this world shouldn't have appeared for long. It was very likely that it was triggered recently. After all, the information obtained from the investigation was from a month ago. Qiao Jin said, then let's walk around the village. Uncle Yang said that the monsters won't appear during the day. The thing will start in 2 days. We'll know by then. You can ask the villagers. Except for Musilian and Enchanting, the others were not afraid. Of course, they had to go out and investigate. Musilian felt that he was simply the god of misfortune. He could encounter all kinds of strange and messy things. When he went back, he must burn incense and pray to Buddha. In this way, he could get rid of his bad luck. Seeing that Qiao Jin and the others were about to go out, he looked back at Enchanting. Aren't you going out? Enchanting was terrified. I'm scared, Muchilian said, don't worry. Just based on the fact that you knocked down the men's team with one punch, everyone here should be afraid of you. Enchanting, she felt wronged. I've never experienced something like this before. It was one thing for her not to be afraid of horror movies. Now that she knew that there was something wrong with this world, she would definitely be terrified when she encountered it in real life. Muchilian suddenly felt that his own image had started to grow. After all, he had experienced the things that happened in the Mountain of Laws, and it was even more amazing than Enchanting. He immediately said, don't be afraid, according to my experience, we must find out the reason why the monsters attacked the villagers at night, and then we can leave. Everyone else, this person was truly optimistic. Xiao Jin felt that things were not that simple. No matter what, they still wandered around the village. On the way, they finally saw some villagers coming out one after another. But when the villagers saw them, their faces were full of horror. They were almost saying that they were terrorists. Fortunately, Zhong Yu was one of them. When they saw Zhong Yu, a few villagers were finally willing to talk to them tentatively. Chapter 868. But even if they knew, it was useless. The villagers didn't give any useful information, except for Uncle Yang, who told them that it would start in 2 days. But they all revealed one thing in common. They were all dead. As for why they died, they didn't know. It was just an inexplicable feeling. It was equivalent to not finding any useful information after the investigation. At night, Xiao Jin and the others huddled together to sleep. Fortunately, Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing had brought suitcases. Zhong Yu found blankets for them to sleep on the floor. The men slept together while the girls squeezed together. Xiao Jin could choose not to sleep, so she didn't rest much for the past 2 days. Because she wanted to see monsters. However, surprisingly, no monsters appeared for the past 2 days. Zhong Yu even asked Uncle Yang why the monsters didn't appear. Uncle Yang only said that it was because the incident was about to start again, and the monsters would appear after the incident was over. He didn't say what this incident meant. 2 days later, early in the morning, Xiao Jin heard a commotion outside. When she looked again, she saw a group of people coming from outside the mountain. Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing were stunned when they saw them. That was because they were wearing ancient armor. They looked like a group of soldiers on the battlefield. The leader was holding his chest and wearing the most imposing armor. He had a square face and looked valiant and righteous, like a general. There were about 20 soldiers in this group, and they were all injured. There was only one girl in the group. She was dressed in white and had a delicate face. She looked a little sad as she followed beside the general. Muchilian was dumbfounded. Fuck, don't tell me they're filming. They were completely confused. What was going on? How could such a scene happen? What was even more surprising was that when the group of people passed by them, the general was shocked when he saw Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin, she, the general pointed at Xiao Jin. He was a little inarticulate because he was too shocked. What kind of clothes are they wearing? Why didn't those men have long hair? This is outrageous. As soon as he finished speaking, more than 20 soldiers raised their weapons at Xiao Jin and the others. Everyone, Muchilian moved closer to Xiao Jin and whispered, "Can they see us?" Xiao Jin narrowed his eyes, but his gaze landed on the girl beside the general. The girl was extremely delicate. When she saw Xiao Jin and the others, her expression was a little dazed. "Have you noticed?" Song Yanqing touched Xiao Jin's palm. "This man is carrying an axe." Xiao Jin saw it. This man who looked like a general was not holding a normal weapon in his hand. Instead, he was holding a huge axe. The monster they saw in their dreams was also holding a huge axe. Xiao Jin narrowed his eyes. Zhong Yu stood up and asked them directly, "Where are you from?" We, the general looked at them in confusion. Someone beside him stood up. "How dare you? This is General Yuqi from the Li Kingdom. Why aren't you kneeling when you see her?" These words were a little dazed and at a loss. Mu Qilian was a bit more direct. He couldn't help but laugh at that moment. "Everyone," Xiao Jin whispered at this moment, "they are the ancients, the real ancients." Chapter 869. This was a strange group of soldiers. They were ancient people, yet they appeared in such a place and even met Xiao Jin. "I've never heard of this Li Kingdom. This is challenging my knowledge of history." Zhong Yu's forehead was throbbing. He was indeed in a terrible fix after encountering something he didn't understand. Song Yanqing, that's normal. Mo Jiang wasn't a character in history books either. To them, Xiao Jin shouldn't even exist. The group of people in front of them could have existed a long time ago. After all, someone like Mo Jiang could appear at that time. It wasn't strange for someone like him to appear in other countries. Mo Jiang looked around curiously and didn't find anything familiar. He only said, "They're injured." "What are you muttering about? Kneel down." The soldiers were still charging at them. At this moment, Song Yanqing stood up and said gently, "Everyone, I see that you're injured too. Why don't you sit down and heal first? We're in the wilderness and haven't seen you before. Please forgive us." "Muzillion, fuck, Brother Yanqing, you're so awesome. What if they're a bunch of lunatics? You really believe that they're generals?" "Zhong Yu, have you forgotten that we're not in a normal world right now?" Muzillion, he had indeed forgotten, but he still found it hard to accept. The mountain of laws was fake, but everything in front of them was real. So much so that such a scene appeared. It was definitely absurd. When General Yuqi heard Song Yanqing's words, his expression eased, but he was still hesitant. "We accidentally passed by here. May I know where this is?" "Xiao Jin, this is Huaxia, another country." "Everyone," General Yuqi turned pale with fright. "We've already escaped this far. Huaxia, why haven't I heard of it before?" Xiao Jin followed Song Yanqing's words and said, "General, you should stay and heal. If you have any questions, we will tell you." It was unknown if it was due to the plot, but they all believed Xiao Jin's words and went to Zhong Yu's house to treat their injuries. Fortunately, Zhong Yu's family had prepared some medicine. He even went to Uncle Yang to get some things. Uncle Yang didn't seem surprised at all. When he went, he gave them a medicine box. When they opened it, they saw that it was full of modern versions of Western medicine, disinfectant. Zhong Yu, the group of soldiers saw many strange things and couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. The only girl in the regiment also rested. She combed her beautiful hair and sat for a while. Then, she stood up and bowed to everyone. "Thank you, benefactors." You're welcome, you're welcome." At this moment, Mu Qi continued the conversation. He asked the girl, "What's your name? Where are you from?" If they were really a group of ancient people, then that would be too rare. How could he see everything with Xiao Jin? Now that even the ancient people had appeared, if he went out and reported it to the country, wouldn't it be a great merit? The prerequisite was that he wouldn't be sent to a mental hospital as a lunatic. "My name is Li Jiao. Like the general, I came from the Li Kingdom. I encountered bandits on the way and was separated from my family. It was General Yuqi who saved my life. Today, I would like to thank you, benefactors." "Oh, you're welcome." Muzillion smiled and waved his hand. Ian Shutian and you were very curious as they looked at the group of soldiers. After all, They were ancient people and had never seen them before. Chapter 870. Enchanting was also a strange woman. On the surface, she said that she was afraid, but her ability to accept things was quite strong. It was probably because her brother had taught her a lot of knowledge. She knew that some things now were fake, but the ancient people they saw were real. General Yu Qi and the others were healing their injuries inside. Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing came outside. Song Yanqing said, "I now understand what's going on. His name is Yu Qi. I've just asked and confirmed that it's the same name. And this was Yu Qi village." What was the connection between General Yu Qi and Yu Qi village? Qiao Jin looked at him with a faint smile. "Don't you feel that there's something wrong with that Li Jiao?" Song Yanqing said, "I have a feeling that she..." Song Yanqing paused and said, "I have a different feeling about her. This difference comes from attraction." Qiao Jin continued this sentence and said with a smile, "But it's not what you think. I also know why you and you dreamed, and it just had to be the two of you. Because that Li Jiao is a spirit master. She was the one who summoned you here." Song Yanqing didn't find it strange. Instead, he sighed softly. "Then I guessed right." When he saw Li Jiao, he felt that something was wrong. Now that he thought about it, it was because of the special connection between spirit masters. This world was created by Li Jiao. This world was created by Li Jiao. Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing said this at the same time. A smile appeared on the corner of Song Yanqing's mouth. Then, he said, "I just don't know what's going on with that monster. That depends on why Li Jiao summoned you and you. She must have a reason to summon you." Qiao Jin said, "The rule formation said that there's no danger here. This danger is for us. It seems that we have to wait for them to continue the plot." This is very similar to Hu Qin's backtracking array point last time. It's also immersed in her memories. The difference is that we can only play a role in that world. This time, we have completely entered this world. But I guess that even if we enter and Li Jiao and the others see us, it won't affect anything. Song Yanqing nodded. "Let's wait and see. My intuition tells me that it won't take long." Qiao Jin also nodded. At this moment, the previously injured General Yu Qi walked out and said to Qiao Jin and the others, "How should I address the two of you?" General Yu Qi was a general, and he could tell that Song Yanqing and Qiao Jin were not ordinary at a glance. When he was in his own country, he had never seen such immortal-like figures. They were simply like the gods and the legends. If they did not say that this place was called Huaxia, General Yu Qi would even think that he had come to the immortal world. "My name is Song Yanqing, and her name is Qiao Jin." After a pause, Song Yanqing suddenly smiled at General Yu Qi and said, "She's my fiancée." Qiao Jin, "Oh." General Yu Qi's eyes lit up. "Then congratulations. The two of you are a perfect match." Song Yanqing nodded and asked naturally, "General, what did you encounter to come here?" General Yu Qi's face darkened. "We were ambushed by bandits on the way here, which is why we met with such a disaster. However, we are lucky to have met all of you in such a fairyland-like place." Chapter 871. General Yu Qi had escaped from the Li Kingdom. The Li Kingdom was at war. They even encountered robbers on the way and saved Li Jiao on the way. According to him, this world was too chaotic. The people were living in poverty everywhere. General Yu Qi was a small general, but there was nothing he could do. The Li Kingdom was not recorded in history, but Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing did not need to care about this. They knew very well that something must have happened after this story, causing Li Jiao to use her ability to trap them here. Day after day, year after year, every time a certain time, this world would restart. After an unknown amount of time, Perhaps like Mo Jiang, she had been trapped for thousands of years. Although General Yuqi was in the same space as them, she did not have much contact with them. Later, Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing discovered that many ancient people wearing cloth clothes appeared in the village. They came from those peasant families. They took good care of these soldiers. They looked like villagers who had lived here for a long time, and they had indeed never heard of the existence of the Li Kingdom. They did not know what kind of history it was. But what was surprising was that they could see Qiao Jin, but they could not see the original ordinary villagers in the village. It was Uncle Yang and his group. This really made people unable to see the situation clearly. It's a little similar to Hu Qin's backtracking array point. It's probably because we have an abnormal ability that General Yuqi and the others can see us. Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing were deep in thought in the courtyard. When they saw Zhong Yu walk out from the other side, their expressions were a little solemn. "I'll go and ask." He opened his mouth and looked at Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing. "Those ancient people are like ghosts. The people in the village can see them, but the ancient people can't see them. Just as you said, they seem to be experiencing a plot." Uncle Yang also said that in the month since they came in, this has already happened 3 times. Those people can't see them, but as long as this plot disappears, that monster will reappear. Song Yanqing pondered for a moment and asked, "Since Uncle Yang told you this, why didn't he tell you what happened later?" Because Uncle Yang said that they didn't know either. They didn't know where General Yuqi and the others came from or how it ended. It was as if something was deliberately erasing their memories. He only remembered that this plot would happen. Qiao Jin fell into deep thought. Zhong Yu looked at Qiao Jin. He knew that Qiao Jin was the most likely person to know what was going on, so he didn't disturb her. Right now, General Yuqi and the others were staying in the village, living in the houses of the ancient people. These few days, Muzilian and Mo Jiang had been blindly monitoring them, and they had learned quite a bit of information. At this moment, a woman's graceful voice suddenly sounded. "Miss Qiao, Sir Song, Sir Zong." Li Jiao walked over. When she saw them talking here, a gentle smile bloomed on her face. "According to you, you are not from here. I want to ask you, when are you planning to leave this place? I don't know if you can bring General Yuqi and the others out as well." Qiao Jin knew that this was just a memory of the past. Obviously, General Yuqi and the others couldn't leave. However, she didn't refuse. She only asked, "Why are you only bringing the general and the others away? Aren't you leaving?" Chapter 872. Li Jiao was an important figure. She was a spiritualist. Just like how Qiao Jin could tell that Yu was a spiritualist at a glance, this strange world must be because of Li Jiao's existence. She could also tell that Li Jiao and the others were people from 1,000 years ago. She didn't know when they existed. This world could only be related to Li Jiao. What was her purpose for summoning Song Yanqing to Yu? Li Jiao lowered her head and looked at the ground. After a while, her smile seemed to be a little forced. "I have some matters to attend to and can't go with you. I can only return the way I came. To be honest, when I was saved by General Yuqi, my parents were separated from me. I have to go back and find them. The Li Kingdom is in chaos. It wasn't easy for General Yuqi to save me. I can't let them go back and get hurt." She spoke with some sadness, as if she was helpless about the war in the Li Kingdom. However, Song Yanqing caught the crux of the matter. General Yuqi protects the country and is fighting a war outside. He has a mission on his shoulders. You said you don't wish to implicate General Yuqi, but can the bandits defeat General Yuqi? This was a very normal logic. General Yuqi was a general. If he went back to save Li Jiao's parents, it was not impossible. The bandits were definitely afraid of the imperial court officials. Why did Li Jiao let them take General Yuqi away and go back alone? She could also ask for help from Qiao Jin and the others. Of course, Song Yanqing and the others knew that Li Jiao was a spiritualist and had the ability to protect herself. But now, they shouldn't know. They could only figure it out from a normal perspective. When Li Jiao heard this, her expression froze. She blinked slightly and her tone was a little desolate. I just don't want to implicate you. After saying this, she didn't seem to want to say any more. She lowered her head and went to look for General Yuqi. The three of them could see that there was something wrong with her. Zhong Yu asked, is this world related to her? It's very obvious. Song Yanqing stared at Li Jiao's back. He had already guessed something. If that monster with the giant axe is General Yuqi's transformation, then I guess Li Jiao might not be chased by the bandits. She's a spirit master of speech. The person chasing her is not an ordinary person. She doesn't want to implicate General Yuqi and the others. Zhong Yu paused for a moment. What is a spirit speaker? Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing, that's right, they had talked for so long, but there were still people like Zhong Yu who didn't know about the existence of spirit speakers. Qiao Jin glanced at Zhong Yu and could only give him a brief explanation. Zhong Yu had already expected such a thing after the incident at the Mountain of Laws. Now that he knew about this matter, he gulped down a mouthful of saliva. Although he was shocked, he had also expected such a thing. It turned out that this world wasn't as simple as he thought. Things were starting to become clearer. This world seemed to be exactly as the rules had said. There was no danger. Li Jiao seemed to have summoned them for a request. Perhaps she wanted to resolve the predicament of this world. Thus, in the next few days, Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing asked the others to reduce the number of times they wandered around the village. They waited at Zhong Yu's home for the development of the matter. There would always be an end. And they realized that even if they didn't appear often, the people in the village didn't seem to be acting strangely. General Yuqi and his 20 or so subordinates were recuperating in the village. Li Jiao didn't come to look for Qiao Jin and the others anymore. She often appeared by the river in the village and stared at the surrounding mountains. Her expression was a little blank and anxious. Chapter 873. The ancients in the village were people who had appeared before. They lived according to the rules. There were men and women, old and young. They showed great kindness to General Yuqi and the others. They took care of General Yuqi as if they were showing Qiao Jin and the others what had happened in the past. The people in the village were kind and simple. They quickly healed General Yuqi's injuries. Even with a bug like Qiao Jin and the others, they did not hide anything. About a week had passed. It was so long that Musilian felt a headache. He wanted to chat with these people and no more. Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing did not let him go, so he did not dare to do anything. He could only stay at Zhong Yu's house all day. It was strange. Zhong Yu's house was the only house where no ancients had appeared. There was no Wi-Fi and no signal. Even if his phone was charged, he could only play small games. These days were so boring that Musilian felt a little desperate. Until one midnight, when Qiao Jin and the others were resting, they suddenly heard other movements in the village. At the same time, Qiao Jin finally felt the turmoil of this world. It was as if the real world that had been created had finally fluctuated, revealing its fake side. The others could not feel it, but Song Yanqing and Yu could. Song Yanqing woke up, and Yu also got up. He appeared a little flustered and impatient. Qiao Jin heard the commotion outside and only whispered, "Don't be agitated. We'll just watch from here." Among the few of them, only Musilian and Enchanting did not wake up. Strictly speaking, only the two of them were considered ordinary people, so their perception was not as strong as the others. Zhong Yu also woke up immediately because he had a vigilant personality. He woke up immediately when something was wrong. Xiao Jin could accurately see what was happening outside through the formation. A group of people came to the village. They held torches and were dressed the same as Li Jiao and the others. They belonged to the ancients from 1,000 years ago. A group of people held sharp weapons. The person confronting them in front of them was Li Jiao. The leader of this group of people was an old woman with a cold expression. She said to Li Jiao, you are the holy maiden of our holy palace. How can you leave the palace without permission? You have to come back with us. Li Jiao's face was a little pale. Can I still live after I go back? You've already killed my parents. Now you want me to go back only because of my ability. They are not your parents. You are the saintess. You never had parents. This old woman was expressionless, and her eyes were even a little lifeless. She looked at Li Jiao and spoke. Her voice was like a poisonous snake. If you go back with us now, the people in this village can still live. How dare you? Li Jiao seemed to be frightened. She looked at the woman in shock and anger. They are just ordinary people. You said that the Holy Palace never kills mortals. If we kill them all, who will know? The woman only stared at Li Jiao. Are you going to leave or not? Zhong Yu and the others opened a crack in the door and watched. They were too far away, so they couldn't hear anything clearly. Only Xiao Jin was listening. Song Yanqing and Yu could vaguely hear something. However, when they heard this conversation, Song Yanqing frowned slightly. They had guessed correctly. Li Jiao was not hiding from bandits, but a group of humans who were not ordinary people. In that era, there were also spiritual readers. Xiao Jin could tell that this woman was an array master. Chapter 874. What happened? Their movements eventually woke General Jade Pool up. He walked out with an axe in his hand. When he saw the woman here, he was shocked. Who are you? General Yu Qi was full of righteousness, and his angry look was very intimidating. However, the woman in front of him was not afraid. She only looked at General Yu Qi, and her expression became even uglier. You, a holy maiden, actually had an affair with a mortal. Li Jiao's face was pale. Don't talk nonsense. If it wasn't for General Yu Qi, I would have been killed by the people of the Holy Palace that day. Now that you want to bring me back, do you think I don't know your purpose? I definitely won't let him come back to life. This is something that goes against the heavens. If I can't do it, don't even think about it. The woman's eyes gradually narrowed. Her pupils were long and thin, like the pupils of a snake. It looked a little terrifying. General Yu Qi saw that something was wrong and immediately woke up his subordinates. He looked at the woman and said, I don't care who you are. Leave this place quickly. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless with the huge axe in my hand. When the woman heard this, she laughed coldly. What happened next was just as Xiao Jin had imagined. This group of people from the Holy Palace began to destroy General Yu Qi and the others. They even began to slaughter the people in the village. The woman waved her wrist and set up a formation. A thick fog rolled and dozens of strange-looking monsters ran out from it. General Yu Qi was shocked. He had never seen such a thing before, but he reflexively pulled Li Jiao away and shouted, Run! Then, he slashed down with the huge axe in his hand towards the monster. The monster ran out from the thick fog, but it had a physical body. After being slashed, it immediately roared and turned into thick smoke and disappeared. The woman's face was also filled with pain. Her gaze was as if she had been poisoned. As she looked at General Yuchi, she gritted her teeth and said, "I want you to die." General Yuchi had come from the battlefield. Not to mention that he had experienced hundreds of battles, his reaction speed was not something that ordinary people could compare to. He held the huge axe in his hand and shouted angrily as he hacked at the group of monsters. The subordinates behind him also heard the commotion and rushed over. Both sides began to fight in the village. Zhong Yu's pupils constricted and he wanted to rush out to help. Song Yanqing grabbed him and shook his head. He said in a low voice, "This is the past. You can't change it. It's too late." Qiao Jin was silent. This world is only reconstructing what happened at that time. We came in with its permission. If we go now, it will collapse immediately. We won't be able to find the reason. We will have to wait. Even so, what happened next was still somewhat unacceptable to them. Although General Yuchi was fighting with them, ordinary people like them were no match for this woman in front of them. Li Jiao watched all of this from the side in shock and anger. She had been controlled by the woman early on. Among the people she brought, there were 2 formation masters who suppressed her until she could not use her ability. The monsters wreaked havoc in the village, killing the ancients who were originally in the village. The torches began to burn, and the flames burned the entire sky. The village was filled with the screams of humans. All of this had happened in the past. Everyone in the village was killed. Their mournful cries resounded through the sky. Even Mo Jiang and Yu had their eyes wide open. They didn't dare to look directly at the tragic scene in front of them. Chapter 875. All of this had happened in the past. Because of this, they could only watch. Li Jiao's cries echoed in the entire world. General Yuchi was actually brave and unstoppable. The 2 formation masters were busy controlling Li Jiao. In a moment of carelessness, he got close to them and chopped down with his axe. They instantly died. Li Jiao broke free from the control and turned around, only to see General Yuchi's body being pierced through by a summoned monster. General Yuchi spat out blood. He only looked at Li Jiao and told her, "Go, go, let young Master Song and the others, go too. Run, run quickly." He spent a lot of effort to finish this sentence and turned around to chop down at the monster. The monster let out a roar and turned into a thick fog before disappearing. The woman who was controlling all of this gritted her teeth and said viciously, "You want to escape? Don't even think about escaping. I'll let you kill them with your own hands." She used a formation and actually turned General Yuchi into a monster that was almost the same as the one she summoned. He held the huge axe and saw with his own eyes that his body was changing. His rationality began to blur. On his righteous face, he only stared at Li Jiao and said, "Quick, run." "Ah!" Li Jiao spat out another mouthful of blood and screamed, "Enough, enough." The world was shaking. Everything seemed to be happening quickly, displaying everything that had happened in the past in front of them. Under Li Jiao's collapse, everyone disappeared. Qiao Jin and the others blinked and saw the flames gradually extinguish. Li Jiao was dressed in white. She stood in the flames with her face covered in blood. She looked around and saw the broken limbs and bones of the villagers. Their corpses were lying on the ground. Just a moment ago, they were still alive. She only stared blankly at all of this. At that moment, a strong sense of regret surged in her heart. If only she hadn't come. If only all of this hadn't happened. General Yuchi and the others could have lived well. They could have lived well. The people in the village could have lived well. The ability of the spirit master of speech came into play. The strong fluctuations in her mind caused everything around her to spin crazily, as if something was happening. Qiao Jin and the others were like bystanders, watching but unable to do anything. At this moment, Qiao Jin suddenly teleported in front of her. She grabbed Li Jiao's hand. The temperature of her wrist was so real. She just looked at her, and her voice was so cold that it was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over her head. Enough. You know what you're doing is wrong. They won't be able to come back to life. Why do you want them to continue suffering? I already know your request. Li Jiao looked at her in a daze. At this moment, her face was still covered with red blood stains, looking somewhat sinister and terrifying. Her tone was very soft as she repeated her words in a daze. Live. Can't come back to life, Qiao Jin sighed. Yes, he won't be able to come back. A person could not come back from the dead. This ability was something that defied the heavens. Even though Li Jiao was a spirit master of speech. However, she wasn't powerful enough. She couldn't pay the price to revive this world. However, the powerful power of the soul speaker was at work. In the end, she created this world that was neither human nor ghost. Everything was distorted and chaotic, and even space was in disorder. It would only reappear during special periods of time. She didn't know how long all of this had reappeared. She had always wanted someone to end all of this. Chapter 876. She was in pain. She knew that she had done something wrong. She hadn't been able to revive them. Instead, she had caused this place to fall into an even more chaotic situation. She wanted someone to end all of this. When this world reappeared, her last obsession appeared in the minds of Yu and Song Yanqing, who were also spirit masters. She had summoned them over because she wanted them, who were also spirit masters, to end all of this. Can't come back to life. Tears immediately gushed out of Li Jiao's eyes. It was as if she couldn't stop them. Her voice only repeated miserably. They can't come back to life. They can't come back to life. This wail seemed to have crossed thousands of years and resounded in the minds of the surrounding people. Li Jiao looked around. There were still the original villagers. They had been harmed by the chaotic space-time. When the world began, they had entered this place. However, because of Li Jiao's wish, they lived like ghosts. Therefore, they were already dead. Li Jiao looked at them and could only cry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, she didn't know how long such a thing had happened. Perhaps it would restart every once in a while, and every time it restarted, it would kill a group of people. Because here, there would always be people who would appear and start a new life. They had no idea what would happen here. Qiao Jin looked at her. You are already powerless to undo it. You know the price of doing something wrong. You want them to live, but the sacrifices are only groups of innocent people. The wish of a spirit master was too powerful. General Yuqi and the others couldn't come back to life at all. However, karma would only be carried out coldly and mercilessly. All wishes had to be paid the price. These innocent people were the price. Appearing here was the price. However, Li Jiao didn't want anyone to die. Therefore, when those people entered this world, they seemed to be alive, but they would be chased by monsters that appeared. But in the real world, they had already disappeared. I'm sorry, she closed her eyes. Thousands of years had passed before she realized what she had done wrong. She shed tears. All of this could not be undone. She could only end all of this now. She suddenly opened her eyes again and looked at the chaos around her. She smiled sadly. No matter what price I pay, I can't undo what I did wrong. She looked at Qiao Jin, but then looked away and saw Song Yanqing in the distance. Song Yanqing and the others had already walked out of Zhong Yu's house. They looked over with gloomy expressions. Song Yanqing roughly knew what had happened because Li Jiao had summoned them. Mo Jiang and the others were a little confused. Li Jiao looked at Song Yanqing and suddenly grabbed Xiao Jin's hand. Her strength was very light, but her grip was very tight. She moved closer to Xiao Jin, but blood began to flow from the corner of her lips. She used the last of her strength to whisper something into Xiao Jin's ear. It was very soft and very weak. He's in a lot of pain. You have to save him. Her eyes were fixed on Song Yanqing. With every word she spoke, more and more blood gushed out of her mouth. A spirit master could see the past and know the future. She saw something on Song Yanqing. Forcefully telling Xiao Jin some information was already against the rules. She vomited more and more blood. Xiao Jin opened his eyes, but his gaze gradually darkened. Chapter 877. She didn't know what Li Jiao saw. But she probably had a premonition in her heart. As Li Jiao's blood gushed out, the surrounding scenes kept collapsing. It was like a scene in a movie, and they were all people in the movie. In the end, all the scenes fell apart, turning into fragments. With a "thpa" sound, something seemed to explode in front of them. All the fragments turned into wisps of light and drilled into their brains. It was as if they had a very, very long dream. General Yu Qi came from the Li nation. Regardless of whether this country existed in history or not, he was still from the Li nation. The Li nation was in war all year round. General Yu Qi was one of the small leaders. He led his subordinates to kill the invaders one batch after another. At that time, the people had no way of making a living. The people of the Li nation practiced divine arts, and the wizards roamed freely. In fact, it was the world of the spiritual reader. General Yu Qi was ambushed by the other party in a small-scale battle. Almost all his men were killed or injured, and he only escaped with more than 20 of his men. On the way, he also saved a girl who was said to be being chased by the robbers. This girl's name was Li Jiao. They came to a nameless small village. At that time, this place still had no name. There were not many villagers here, but most of them were kind and simple. They saved General Yu Qi, Li Jiao, and the others and let them stay here in peace. Unexpectedly, a few days later, someone came to the village to cause trouble. It was a group of array masters. It turned out that Li Jiao was not being chased by the robbers. She was a saintess who was stopped by a spiritual reader. This organization had always been brutal and helped other countries persecute the people of the Li nation. Li Jiao did not dare to say where she came from because she was afraid that General Yu Qi would misunderstand. She was a saintess, but in fact, she was a spiritual reader. Because of her powerful ability, she had always been well kept by the Holy Palace. Because the palace master of the Holy Palace was an array master, he knew that a spiritual reader could defy the heavens, so he wanted to use Li Jiao to revive himself after death. Li Jiao had not suffered much. It was not until she saw the cruelty of the outside world that she realized that the ivory tower she had been staying in was just a cage built with bloody methods. She learned a lot from General Yu Qi and the others. She also felt the kindness of the ordinary people. However, tragedy still came. The people from the Holy Palace came to capture her and force her to go back. She didn't want to, but she got herself into big trouble. The sacred palace displayed their cruel side. They killed everyone in the village and even turned General Yu Qi, who had fought to the death, into a monster. And before he died, he still told Li Jiao to run. Such a cruel fact dealt a huge blow to Li Jiao. Her ability was in chaos, and she regretted that she had caused all of this. She covered up all of this in her misery. She just wanted none of this to happen, so that she could start all over again. However, her ability was not enough to pay the price. Her ability caused this land to collapse and the space to become chaotic. Every 500 years, there would be changes. This world would reappear and devour all living beings on the surface, using their lives to make up for the karma required to maintain this world. The story would only repeat itself. Everything that had happened before would be reincarnated over and over again. A new life would pass away, and Li Jiao's soul would always be in pain. She didn't want to see this kind of thing go on endlessly, but there was nothing she could do to change it. In her world, she would reappear. She would be alive. She would still have consciousness, but she would not be able to do anything. Chapter 878. Every time the ending came, it would definitely be like this. It wasn't until thousands of years later that Song Yanqing and Yu received the premonition that she sent out. Qiao Jin also received the report from the spirit group. This time was different from 500 years ago. If there was a problem in the village, it would still be discovered by others. This tragedy that had lasted for thousands of years finally came to an end. Enchanting and Musilian felt as if they had had a very, very long dream. In the dream, they seemed to have become Li Jiao. They felt what Li Jiao felt and understood Li Jiao's pain. When Enchanting woke up, there were still traces of tears on her face. It was as if she had just woken up from a dream. She saw Zhong Yu standing beside her and quickly grabbed his hand. "Brother, I think I had a very long dream." The things in the dream were too clear, so she actually remembered everything when she woke up. She was a little anxious. "This place, I know." Zhong Yu's tone was indifferent. He pulled Enchanting. "Everything is over. We can leave now." They were in this world, so they knew about Li Jiao. Enchanting was a little confused. "Is that so?" She still had Li Jiao's feelings, so when Zhong Yu helped her wipe the corners of her eyes, she realized that she was actually crying. At the same time, Musilian, who had woken up, was dumbfounded. He also took Li Jiao's perspective and felt Li Jiao's pain. When he woke up, his face was filled with grief. "I wasn't even in so much pain when I was dumped by my first love, Zhong Yu." Someone pushed the door open and came in. Mo Jiang shouted lazily, "We can go now." Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing pulled you along and were still outside looking at the situation in the village. The world collapsed and the real world reappeared. However, there was no one in all the houses. Qiao Jin sighed softly. Before the world collapsed, they saw Uncle Yang waving at them. They disappeared together in that world. Song Yanqing walked over and said softly, "Li Jiao gave me something." He opened his hand, and there seemed to be a stream of light in his palm. Qiao Jin knew at a glance, this is Li Jiao's spiritual seed. She was a spirit master of speech and was considered a spirit reader. Naturally, she had a spirit seed. Song Yanqing was puzzled. Why would she give it to me? Qiao Jin was also here, and the destruction of the world had little to do with her. Qiao Jin shook his head and didn't mind. Since she gave it to you, it means that the spirit seed is more important to you. The spirit seed of a spiritual master of speech is rare. Just because you can't use it now doesn't mean you can't use it in the future. Keep it. Song Yanqing also lowered his head to look at the spirit seed in his hand. A light flashed across his eyes as he nodded. Cough, cough. While they were talking, a person suddenly walked out from a farmhouse not far from Zhong Yu's house. The man's clothes were a little shabby. When he suddenly came out and saw Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing, he immediately burst into tears. "Are you people alive? Are you people alive? He's a sorcerer." Qiao Jin rubbed his chin and was curious. He's actually still alive. Even she couldn't be sure about the spatial chaos. Others might have entered the real world or the fake world, but no matter what, they would experience something terrifying. Or they would encounter General Yuchi's monster form. It was indeed lucky to be able to survive. This should be one of the 2 spirit readers sent by the spirit group. It was indeed fortunate that he was still alive. Chapter 879. That person walked towards them and his tone was very excited. Song Yanqing went over and said a few words to him. That person nodded. Song Yanqing then came over and said to Qiao Jin, he's from the local spirit group. He was sent here to investigate. He's been inside for the past few days, but he didn't see anyone. He didn't enter the same space as Muzillion and the others. Qiao Jin nodded. Yes. Since the matter was settled, Li Jiao's matter was also over, and the spirit seed had been obtained. Qiao Jin and the others prepared to go back. This spirit reader also had to go back and report the situation. However, it was probably impossible for the remaining people who did not appear to appear. When they left, Song Yanqing asked Qiao Jin, "What did Li Jiao say to you at the end?" He asked casually, but there was a hint of probing. When she spoke at the end, Li Jiao was looking at him, so Song Yanqing could feel that what Li Jiao said was probably related to him, but he didn't know what she said. Qiao Jin was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "She said that it was very painful to see you." Song Yanqing paused for a moment. There was some silence between the 2 of them. After a long while, Qiao Jin said, "You said that you would feel that you were in the Rakshasa world. Other than that, you didn't feel anything else." Song Yanqing's gaze was a little complicated. He had only told Qiao Jin that he would feel that he was in the Rakshasa world, but he had never told her what his feeling was based on. That kind of soul-tearing pupils and the despair of not seeing the light of day and night could make a person unable to breathe. Song Yanqing didn't know what it was either. Even if he told Qiao Jin now, it probably wouldn't be of much use. He only knew that all of this was probably related to what Qiao Jin had said. Perhaps he did know her a long time ago, but he had forgotten. And she had also forgotten. He did not know why his soul was in the Rakshasa world, but he instinctively thought that there was a secret behind it. He sighed. "I'm not too sure either. She can see my pain, but I don't know where my pain comes from." Spirit speakers are the same. They can see the fate of others, but they can't see their own fate clearly. Just like herself and Li Jiao. If Li Jiao could see what happened in the ending, this world would not exist. At this moment, Muzillion walked over and saw their car halfway up the mountain. He was so excited that he could die. "Are we leaving? Are we finally leaving? Oh my God, I can't believe we've completed the mission again." Once again, the mission ended when he didn't know what was going on. Qiao Jin, a person who slept the whole time lying down, was really thick-skinned. Enchanting was still immersed in the grief of Li Jiao's story. When she walked over, she looked a little listless. Qiao Jin said to Zhongyu, "When we go back, we still can't tell anyone about this." The spirit group could know, but there was no need for ordinary people to know. Zhongyu nodded. He thought for a moment and asked, "The spirit group you mentioned, are they all people like you?" Qiao Jin nodded and smiled. "There are also ordinary people. Just like ordinary companies, they always need to deal with some matters. Of course, they all know the existence of spirit readers." Zhongyu's expression was a little complicated. "Does the country know about this?" "Of course they know. The spirit group belongs to the country to begin with, but it's an independent organization. If no one manages it, this world would have long been in chaos with just spirit readers." Chapter 880. There were so many demonic spiritualists under their control. If this was a chaotic era, there would probably be even more deaths. Mo Jiang also walked up from behind and sighed. It's so annoying. We don't know anything. We have to report the situation when we go back. After all, she was here on behalf of the spirit group. When she returned, the spirit group would definitely ask her a lot of questions. Xiao Jin said, "You just need to tell them what happened here. They won't ask too much." It was useless to ask. Mo Jiang clicked his tongue again and got into the car. "Let's get out of here quickly. There's no internet or takeout for a few days. I'm going crazy." Xiao Jin, the high priest, was really familiar with this era too quickly. They took the car back one by one. They were still distributed as they came. Zhong Yu drove Muzillion and the others, while Xiao Jin drove Mo Jiang and the others. Song Yanqing drove in front. On the way back, they saw a swarm of police cars driving over. She was even stopped halfway. Now that the world was over and the truth was exposed, so many people in the village had disappeared. They would definitely come to clean up the mess. As for how to deal with this matter, it was up to the spirit group and the police to explain. Obviously, the matter here could only be suppressed and could not be made public. Zhong Yu and the others were still a little depressed. After all, they had lived in the village for so long. In the end, when they came back, the people were basically gone. It was a pity that they had left. It made them feel too helpless. In the end, they did a simple investigation and left some information. Probably because the spirit group had news, they did not stop them from staying and doing any more investigation. When they left the mountain and the mobile phone signal was restored, the spirit group quickly called Xiao Jin and the others. Zhongli Peining knew that the matter was resolved and was a little excited. "It's really resolved. Is there an array master in there?" "Not really. The existence of the spirit speaker was a secret to them." Xiao Jin did not say. "It's a world formed by obsession. It's gone now, and nothing will happen in the future." Zhongli Peining sighed. "I heard that everyone in the village has disappeared." Xiao Jin said, "They were sucked into that world and disappeared. There's nothing we can do about it. They came too late." Zhongli Peining couldn't help but say, "There are a lot of these things. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid that more people would have disappeared." Xiao Jin said, "I just happened to run into it." Zhongli Peining, "We will transfer the money to your card." Xiao Jin, "Okay." Although she didn't really do anything this time. After hanging up, she whispered to Song Yanqing, "I got 10 million. I'll treat you and you to a meal." Song Yanqing, he couldn't help but smile. Mo Jiang was not convinced. "What about me? I came with you. Why didn't you invite me?" Xiao Jin, "You also got the money. Why do you still want me to treat you?" Mo Jiang, "This doesn't conflict with you treating me, so treat me." Xiao Jin, who had been sitting at the back of the seat, was a little unhappy. After Mo Jiang and Xiao Jin finished talking, he teased him, "Why do you look unhappy? Your sister Xiao Jin is treating you," said gloomily. "I always feel like I've seen the old witch beside Sister Li Jiao somewhere before." Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin immediately frowned. "You've seen her before?" The old witch was obviously referring to the array master who came to capture Li Jiao. However, she had also died in that world for thousands of years. You actually said that he had seen her before. Chapter 881. Where have you seen it before? This was what Song Yanqing asked. If it was you who saw it, it meant that Li Jiao's matter was not over yet. It was not as simple as luring them here. An array master who had lived for thousands of years was still terrifying in itself. No one knew how many evil deeds she had done to survive. Yu was at a loss for a moment before she suddenly said, "It seems like a dream." She had seen it in a dream. Xiao Jin said, the dream could also be a premonition dream. Since you dreamed it, it means that she really didn't die. A spirit master could see through a person's future and know the past. If it was a dream, it would definitely be related to the spirit master himself. Perhaps one day, the two sides would meet. If you dreamed it, it meant that Li Jiao's connection with them was not as simple as settling Li Jiao's matter. Song Yanqing frowned and said, how much does an array master have to pay to continue living? Xiao Jin did not answer this question. Mo Jiang suddenly said, it's so big that you can't imagine it. Although Mo Jiang had lost her memory, her instincts as an array master were still there. She seemed to know how to answer this question and explained, if it's an array master, then they will transfer the karma of death to others. At the same time, they will also transfer the backlash. Since they are still alive after so many years, the number of people who died is probably in the tens of thousands. Perhaps in the long river of history, this number was nothing. However, a person had lived until now in order to survive. In other words, her body was stained with the lives of so many people. Moreover, could it be guaranteed that she was only doing it to survive? A rare trace of coldness appeared in Song Yanqing's eyes. After all, they really could not imagine what kind of existence an executioner who slaughtered thousands of people was. Xiao Jin suddenly turned to look at Mo Jiang. Do you really not remember anything about your resurrection? Mo Jiang was silent for a moment. She was not as casual as before. A hint of fatigue still flashed in her eyes. Did many people pay the price for my resurrection? She didn't suffer any backlash, so she was resurrected. Previously, she had lost her memories. Now, with her instincts as an array master, she naturally knew that her resurrection would not be so simple. How could there be such a cheap thing in this world? There had to be an equivalent exchange for everything, especially karma without emotions. She knew that she had to pay a cruel price for her resurrection. But she really couldn't remember. Every time he thought of this, Mo Jiang's heart would ache. Because she didn't know what she was shouldering. Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin looked at each other. They knew why Mo Jiang was resurrected, but some things were better left unsaid. Right at this moment, you suddenly said, Qian Song. Xiao Jin, Song Yanqing shook his head and said nothing. Mo Jiang looked at you. When he heard the name Qian Song, his expression changed. What did you see? I can't see. Unexpectedly, you just shook her head. Sister Mo Jiang, I can't see anything on your body. I can only hear someone beside you saying the name Qian Song. I don't know anything else. You already knew that she was a spiritual speaker. After all, Song Yanqing taught her. So she knew that she could see some people's past. Chapter 882. Can't see. Song Yanqing glanced at you. Back then, he had seen the image directly, but you had only heard it. Xiao Jin said in a low voice, your strength is different from Yu's. Even if they were spiritual readers, there would be differences. Yu was too young now. Song Yanqing was also different. His ability had grown to a terrifying level. This was something that Xiao Jin had known back then. Therefore, he could directly see through Mo Jiang's past, but he could only see a little. Perhaps because of the array on Mo Jiang's body, some things were deliberately hidden. Qian Song. Mo Jiang was immersed in these two words. There seemed to be some urgency on his face. I feel that it's very familiar, but I can't remember. Some things, the more one thought about it, the more one would have a headache. Even Mo Jiang, who felt that these two words held a lot of weight in the depths of his memory, was shaken when he heard them now. But when he tried to recall the past, he always felt that he couldn't remember, as if it was a kind of deliberate suppression. If you can't remember, then don't think about it. Don't force yourself. Xiao Jin advised Mo Jiang. If you can't remember some things for the time being, it means that it's not the right time. Including his own memory loss. Some things were set with a pattern. Even if Xiao Jin wanted to force himself to remember something in advance, he probably wouldn't get a good result. This meant that the time wasn't right. Since Mo Jiang couldn't remember, it meant that it wasn't the right time. Mo Jiang nodded. His face was a little pale. He picked up his phone again. Which hotel are we staying at? I'll order takeout. Xiao Jin, Song Yanqing, they returned to the city first and temporarily stayed in a hotel. They would go back tomorrow. They were divided into a few rooms. This time, only the men could stay in a suite, and the girls could stay alone. They were supposed to live separately, but Muzilian insisted that he was scared and that he would only feel safe with brother Yanqing. Mo Jiang returned to the hotel and changed into a set of light pajamas. The spirit group had also transferred 10 million to her. Originally, there was no such thing, but Xiao Jin had requested it, so the spirit group had no choice but to comply. After all, Mo Jiang was also a big shot. They couldn't afford to offend him. Mo Jiang was an honest person. The first thing he did when he received the money was to book his 3 million sports car and send a message to Meng Qingyu. Mo Jiang, do you need money? Meng Qingyu, no, Mo Jiang, I have to fulfill my duty. Then, she transferred 500,000 yuan to Meng Qingyu's card. Mo Jiang, 500,000 first. Ask for more if you don't have enough money. Meng Qingyu was speechless. Meng Qingyu. It felt like a dream. One day, she actually became a mistress. Previously, when the big boss said that he would take care of them, she actually didn't mind. But when she saw the 500,000 yuan, Meng Qingyu obeyed. She even took a screenshot and posted it on her WeChat moments. She had many friends from university in her WeChat moments. At that time, a wave of people began to reply. Meng Qingyu, is this what it feels like to be a mistress? Picture, money isn't important. What's important is that I admire you as a person and want to be friends with you. Where can I find such a mistress? Waiting online. It's urgent. I don't care if you're rich or not. The main thing is that you're especially beautiful in my eyes. Do you need a boyfriend? Fuck, where did you get such a rich mistress? Do you still need a mistress? The kind who can run errands, fight, talk sweet words, and sleep with you. Can they not be a girl? It's definitely not for money. I just want a warm mistress like you. Chapter 883. On the way back, Yin Shutian felt like she was in a dream. Now, the few of them were in the same room. The suite they lived in could accommodate the 3 girls. Yin Shutian came out of the shower and still couldn't fall asleep. She couldn't help but ask Xiao Jin, can you tell me what's going on? Ever since she entered that world, she had been in a daze. Even though her brother had a simple explanation, she still felt like she was dreaming. She had thought that she was simply going to the countryside with her brother to pay respects to her brother's grandfather. The 2 families had been together since she was very young. She had a good relationship with Zhong Yu since she was young. Who would have thought that such a terrifying thing would happen later? Those people were all dead. They lived in a fake world. If Zhong Yu's explanation only made Yin Shutian half believe it, then Li Jiao's memory was undoubtedly the best answer. Everyone in the fake world had experienced the pain Li Jiao had felt at that time. Through Li Jiao's memory, she had indeed seen a vivid past. There was once a tragic event that happened in a country that had never existed in history, with no people. If it was fake, who had the ability to instill such a memory in their minds? Xiao Jin glanced at Yin Shutian. Your brother didn't tell you. Enchanting hesitated and said, Brother told me some basic things, but I want to know more. No one could hold it in. Especially after her worldview had been destroyed. Mo Jiang ate potato chips at the side and said, because in this world, other than humans, there is also an existence called a spiritual reader. These people are born with extraordinary abilities. Have you seen the TV series of urban fantasy movies? It's that kind of movie. The difference is that reality really exists. Xiao Jin, the explanation was simple and crude, but it was clear. Enchanting had already received some relevant information at the beginning. She was not particularly shocked now, but her heart was a little complicated. So that Li Jiao is a spiritual reader. Did she create that world? Mo Jiang, more or less. A spiritual reader actually has such powerful strength, Enchanting sighed. Then could our world also be fake? Mo Jiang immediately glanced over. Young lady, you're thinking too much. Xiao Jin smiled faintly. No one has such great power. Spiritual readers usually don't affect ordinary people. This world still needs rules. Is that so? Enchanting heaved a sigh of relief and reacted quickly. So, this Li Jiao we met was just an accident and didn't affect most people. Xiao Jin nodded. Enchanting lowered her head again, as though she was sighing. But brother was very unhappy. He never expected that when he returned to the village, everyone was gone. The villagers who had watched him grow up, Mo Jiang munched on his potato chips. His tone was even colder than Xiao Jin's. This world is like this. Since there are psychics, there will always be some unforeseen things. There will always be people who harbor evil thoughts or do things that cannot be undone. Enchanting looked at Xiao Jin and Mo Jiang. Are you both spiritual readers? Right? After all, she was also a member of the army. Her sharpness and observation skills were definitely stronger than ordinary people. Moreover, in Li Jiao's world, Xiao Jin and the others were indeed too calm. Chapter 884. Yes. Mo Jiang did not deny it, and Xiao Jin also nodded. Enchanting said, How can I become a spirit reader? Mo Jiang said, Go out and buy a lottery ticket. If you win 10 million yuan, it means that you have a 1 in 100,000 chance of winning the lottery and becoming a spirit reader. Enchanting, there were so many people in the world, and China had more than 1 billion people. There were only a few thousand spirit readers who were familiar with the spirit group. In addition to those who were hidden among ordinary people, there were at most 10,000 people. This ratio was indeed much more difficult than winning the lottery. Xiao Jin and the others had encountered many, but they were spirit readers themselves. The world of spirit readers was naturally different from that of ordinary people. Xiao Jin felt that it was quite good to bring Mo Jiang along. At least when they met such a newcomer, it would be better for Mo Jiang to explain it in the future than for him to explain it. Enchanting was deep in thought. Mo Jiang glanced at her. Aren't you afraid of us? Enchanting asked curiously, Why should I be afraid of you? Mo Jiang sneered. I thought that ordinary people like you would be scared to death when you heard that someone was a spirit reader. After all, it was completely possible for them to treat spirit readers as monsters. Xiao Jin said, Muzilian might, but Shutian won't. Enchanting was just like her brother. She could still control her shock. Enchanting reacted. Isn't Qilian one? I thought he was one too. Of course he isn't. Xiao Jin shook her head. He's the same as your brother. He was implicated. But fortunately, he was lucky enough to meet me twice. Otherwise, it was hard to say if Muzilian would be able to come out of the mountain of rules the first time. Enchanting knew that many people had died in Li Jiao's world. If it weren't for them, he might have been trapped in the world and couldn't come out. At this moment, she sincerely said to Qiao Jin, "Thank you for saving my brother." "Qiao Jin, you're welcome. Even without me, your brother might have been able to come out." Muzilian was in danger. After Mo Jiang finished his potato chips, Qiao Jin said, "I remember that you female celebrities have a strong requirement for your own figure. How can you just eat a pack of these high-calorie things?" Mo Jiang took a bag and gave it to Qiao Jin. "It's okay. I won't get fat." She really wouldn't gain weight no matter how much she ate. The array formation master had given her an array formation that was beneficial to her body and mind. Moreover, he knew how to exercise. She really wasn't afraid of eating some snacks. Mo Jiang's appetite wasn't that big. At this moment, Enchanting remembered that Mo Jiang was a female star. She couldn't help but smile sweetly. "What TV series are you in? I'll go take a look." "Mo Jiang, it's not out yet. I'm just a pretty face." "Enchanting, is it really okay to be so honest?" Even if Mo Jiang's face did meet the definition of a pretty face. Enchanting cheered her on. "It's okay. When you become popular, there will definitely be big tricks looking for you in the future. You can also watch some other movies and figure out your acting skills. This way, the audience won't think that you're a pretty face with no acting skills." Because a pretty face was a bad word, Enchanting was giving Mo Jiang chicken soup for the soul. Mo Jiang gave her poisonous chicken soup with a backhand. She touched her face and couldn't help but click her tongue. "Why do I have to figure out my acting skills? I don't need the audience to see my acting skills. They only need to see my face and know that I'm beautiful." Was everything else important? Enchanting, you really couldn't do anything to such an unconventional person. Chapter 885. After resting in Nanjiang City for a day, they returned to the capital the next day. Mo Jiang went straight back to the set, while Zhongyu brought Enchanting home. Song Yanqing sent Qiao Jin and Muzilian home before he went back with you. When the people in the Mu family saw Mu Qilian and Qiao Jin coming back together, they were a little surprised. "Where the hell did you go? I haven't been able to get through to you for a few days. Didn't you lose your phone?" Mu Qi held his phone that was still there. Should he throw it away or not? Qiao Fei looked at Qiao Jin and asked, "Jin, how did you run into your third brother again?" Qiao Jin did not say where he was going with his suitcase. "Why did he come back with Muzilian?" Qiao Fei was very imaginative and said in shock, "Did you go somewhere you shouldn't have gone and come back with Jin? Were you afraid that I would scold you if I found out? So you asked Jin to shield you, right?" Muzilian. Why was his mother always so imaginative? Qiao Jin chuckled. "We happened to run into each other on the way. There was no need to say too much about some things, in case Qiao Fei and the rest got worried." She carried her suitcase upstairs. Qiao Fei stared at Muzilian when he saw her go up. "How did you run into your sister? Where did she go?" Muzilian did not blush at all. "We happened to run into each other at the airport. If he was not thick-skinned, how could he have become the most dazzling prince at the disco?" Qiao Fei, do you think I don't know your character? I know what you are going to say the moment you raise your butt. Muzilian. Mom, how can you be so vulgar? This is not befitting of your status as Mrs. Mu. Why do you care? I can't control your sister if she grows up, but can't I control you? Muzilian. Why can't you control her when she's all grown up? Why do you control me? You bully the weak and fear the strong. Even persimmons have to be bullied by the weak. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Qiao Fei pick up the familiar feather duster. Mom! Musilian was furious. I just came back and you want to hit me. Do you believe that I won't come back in the future? He was beaten up by Xiao Fei until he jumped up and down. After a while, Musichu returned from outside. Seeing Musichu, Musilian ran towards him. Brother, save me, save me. Musichu was used to seeing Musilian get beaten up. Out of sight, out of mind, he planned to pass by calmly. However, Musilian came over and suddenly looked at his face. Brother, why is your face so dark? Have you become darker recently? I don't feel anything. Look at your little hand, it's still so white. Musilian said as he held his hand. Musichu slapped his hand away and frowned. Why are you so weird when you come back? No wonder Mom hit you. I already said your eyes are here, Musilian said as he took 2 steps back and looked at him suspiciously. Yes, they are a little dark. It was a little strange. It was like a shadow, not a shade on his skin. However, other parts of Musichu's body were normal. How is it dark? Xiao Fei rushed over to teach Musilian a lesson. How is your brother dark? Look at how white his little face is. Musilian blinked. He didn't know if he was hallucinating, but he felt that there was a dark cloud on his brother's face. Then, the dark cloud disappeared. When he looked at Musilian again, his face returned to normal. Xiao Jin, who was upstairs, paused for a moment. Chapter 886. A wisp of black gas seeped into the array set up by Xiao Jin. Then, it was silently devoured. The black gas came from outside, which meant that someone in the Mu family had been set up with an array, but it didn't work. The people of the Mu family had been nurtured in her array for a long time. Even if they didn't have any abilities, they had a certain resistance. If an ordinary array master or spiritual master tried to use some abilities on them, they would usually be intercepted and rendered ineffective. Then, they were devoured by Xiao Jin's array at home. She was the one who set up the array, so she could naturally feel it. She immediately turned around and went downstairs. Then, she saw Musichu coming back. The black gas was brought back by Musichu. Musilian was still shouting beside him. I just saw that his little face was a little dark. Xiao Fei said, You're the one with a dark face. Musichu saw Xiao Jin. He nodded and called out, Xiao Jin, you're back. Xiao Jin nodded and said to Musichu with a smile, Musichu, did you just come back from studying? Yes. Musichu was a good student who worked hard. Usually, he was either studying or on the road to study. Generally, he didn't do anything unnecessary. Occasionally, he would have fun. It was a high-quality activity that cultivated his body and mind. His consciousness and self-discipline were not on the same level as Musilian and Xiao Jin. He was the perfect successor of the Mu family after Mu Qiji. You can't study every day. Xiao Fei still felt sorry for her second son. Your grades are already excellent. You don't have to work too hard. I know you want to help your eldest brother, but look at your third brother. He's always fooling around. You have to relax yourself. She was really afraid that her second son would become stupid. Musichu nodded, Mom, I know. I usually relax. You don't have to worry. Of course, he knew what he was doing. He had inherited the good genes of the Mu family, so he would not tire himself out with his studies. Musilian felt offended and accused her righteously, Mom, what right do you have to say that to me? I'm not the only one in our family who's crippled. Look at Xiao Jin. She was usually more willing to take leave than he was. Although he knew what Xiao Jin usually did, he wanted his mother to know that they were all useless together. I can't just give him moral advice. Otherwise, wouldn't he be at the bottom of this family? No. Xiao Fei wanted to scold him again. Jean is a girl, and you are a guy. Aren't you ashamed to compare yourself with her? Muzillion pointed at her and said, Okay, Mom, what era are you still discriminating against men and women? Don't you know that men and women are equal? Your thoughts are still stuck in the last century, how sad. Xiao Fei picked up the feather duster and was about to hit him again. Xiao Jin was amused by the two of them. She glanced at Musichu. Musichu was particularly noticed by her gaze. He keenly sensed something and asked, What's wrong? Xiao Jin smiled faintly and said, Who were you with when you were studying? It was quite a low-level maze. No wonder it didn't work. Musichu suddenly understood something. He frowned and said, A few classmates in the same classroom. We were tutoring with the same teacher. They were not tutoring. They were studying courses that the school was not ready to teach at the moment. He was about to graduate and was preparing for the postgraduate entrance exam. After a pause, he added, It only started recently. Chapter 887. What he meant was that Huiyao had only started studying recently, which meant that he had only met these people recently. Someone in the group had bad intentions towards Musichu. The bewitching array was just a small array. To a certain extent, it was used to confuse the target and make them change their minds. Most of the time, it was used on people who liked them but did not like them. Xiao Jin did not find it strange when he saw Musichu's reaction. He guessed that someone had bad intentions towards Huiyao. Xiao Jin pondered for a moment. Shall I go with you to the tutoring class tomorrow? Musichu raised his brow. You want to go too? Xiao Jin nodded. He could guess what was going on, so he did not stop Huiyao. Xiao Fei was a little surprised when he heard this. You want to go for tutoring? Can you keep up with your second older brother's progress? Xiao Jin was speechless. Mothers were very straightforward, so Xiao Fei did not think there was anything wrong with what he said. Muzillion looked at Xiao Jin and then at Musichu before he suddenly said, I want to go too. Xiao Fei said, You want to go everywhere. You are everywhere. Can't you just stay at home for one day? Muzillion said, I don't see you playing mahjong or shopping with your friends when I'm at home. Xiao Fei was speechless. What kind of disaster had she given birth to? Couldn't he be as mature and sensible as his two older brothers? Xiao Fei's heart ached. Musichu did not mind. Since they want to go, we usually follow the teacher's progress in class. They can try one class. If they don't like it, they can just skip it next time. Xiao Fei wouldn't stop them. Instead, he said to Muzillion, Sure, but don't disturb your brother's study progress. Be more serious in class. Don't be so careless all the time. Muzillion, I just told you not to discriminate between men and women, and now you're telling me that Xiao Jin's studies aren't that good, so why don't you scold her? Xiao Fei, her boyfriend is Lord Song, are you? Muzillion, using a romantic partner to discriminate against others is too much. Xiao Jin chuckled. This matter was decided. Muzillion still felt that something was off. He went into Musichu's room and whispered to Musichu, Brother, I really saw something wrong with your face just now. Could it be that my eyes were playing tricks on me? Xiao Jin heard this and glanced at Muzillion. There was indeed a black aura on Musichu's body just now. Did Muzillion see it? Muzillion didn't show any signs of awakening, so he shouldn't be able to see these things. However, after all, he came out of the mountain of rules and experienced Li Jiao's incident. He was more or less affected and could see something different. Xiao Jin was about to return to his room thoughtfully when Xiao Fei suddenly grabbed Xiao Jin. Jin, Mom wants to ask you something. Xiao Jin turned to face Xiao Fei. Yes, go ahead. Xiao Fei's expression was a little gossipy. You and Lord Song are quite happy now, right? Of course. Xiao Jin raised his eyebrows slightly. Why did you suddenly ask this? You don't know. The main thing is that everyone now knows that you and Lord Song are dating. I heard that your relative, Chai Yueli, went to the Song family. Hearing this, Xiao Jin's smile faded. Chai Yueli went to the Song family. Xiao Fei nodded vigorously. Yes, she went to the Song family. I heard it from my friend. Chapter 888. When the news came, Xiao Fei was furious. However, she was in no position to ask the Song family now, so she didn't know the details. She only knew that such a piece of news had spread. Xiao Jin lowered her eyes and thought for a moment. Fei, when did this happen? Yesterday. Xiao Fei said, I was thinking that you and Lord Song just came back, so I don't know what Chai Yueli said to Lord Song's mother. Now, only Song Yanqing's mother was in the Song family. Xiao Fei had never met her. Now that she knew that Chai Yueli went to Song Yanqing's house, she despised Chai Yueli for being so thick-skinned. On the other hand, she was afraid that Song Yanqing's mother didn't know the truth. What if she sympathized with Chai Yueli? What would Song Yanqing's biological mother and adoptive mother think? You don't have to worry. Xiao Jin knew Song Yanqing's mother's character. She just felt that she had underestimated Chai Yueli's thick skin. She couldn't get anything good from the Ji family. Now that Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing were dating, her eyes moved quickly. Xiao Fei was a little hesitant. I just thought that she's your biological mother after all. There are many things that are difficult for her to do. Otherwise, outsiders will know what to say about you, Xiao Jin said. It's okay. I'll call Yanqing. Song Yanqing definitely wouldn't be polite to Chai Yueli. She mainly wanted to know what Chai Yueli said in the past. Not long after she went upstairs, Song Yanqing called. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. Guess who came to my house yesterday? Xiao Jin's tone was very straightforward. Chai Yueli. Song Yanqing said, it seems that you've received the news. My mother was at home yesterday. She received Chai Yueli. Xiao Jin asked directly, what did they say? My mom said that she's here to get close to you. Because he was facing Xiao Jin, Song Yanqing's words were much more direct. My mother played dumb and dealt with it. She knows about the matter between you and the Ji family, so she won't do anything unnecessary. You can rest assured. I'm not worried about your mother. Xiao Jin's tone was calm. If Chai Yueli can go to the Song family, she can do other things. Song Yanqing paused for 3 seconds. Don't worry. I'll send her back to wherever she came from. This is just a small matter. Don't worry too much about it. If Chai Yueli did something that annoyed Song Yanqing, he didn't doubt that Xiao Jin would deal with them. However, he thought differently. Chai Yueli was Xiao Jin's biological mother in name. No one could be sure about karma. Even if Xiao Jin was confident, he didn't want Xiao Jin to get involved in this. The best way was for him to use the Song family's ability to send Chai Yueli abroad and never appear in front of them for the rest of her life. Xiao Jin was silent for a moment before saying, okay. Song Yanqing said calmly, why care about some people who aren't worth caring about? Anyway, you've already taken the shares. They have to accept it no matter what. By the way, I also said that I'd treat you to a meal. Xiao Jin thought for a moment. When are you free? I'll treat you to a meal. Of course, you know that Mo Jiang will be coming too. Song Yanqing laughed in a low voice. I'll wait for 2 days. I just came back. Now that my father and sister are abroad, I need to take care of the domestic matters. Xiao Jin, okay. She thought to herself, see, people who work are so tired. She'd better be a fortune teller for the rest of her life. Chapter 889. The next day, Xiao Jin went to study with Musichu and Musilian. It wasn't early in the morning, but Mu Xiangshan saw them when they were leaving. He saw the three of them going out together, and he even heard Xiao Fei say that they were going to study. He was surprised. Oh, did the sun rise from the west, or did the 9th miracle appear in the world? The two of you are actually going to study with your second brother. Listen to what he said. Musilian was not convinced. Grandpa, what's wrong with you? Don't Xiao Jin and I look like people who like to study? Mu Xiangshan said, don't you know whether you like to study or not? Musilian said, of course. Mu Xiangshan, it seemed that not only did they not know, but they were also shameless. He rolled his eyes and ignored these people. He picked up his fishing rod and went out again. He was not fishing at home. Recently, he had made an appointment with a group of old comrades to go to a specialized fishing center. They chatted and gossiped about the younger generation in the family. Among them was Ji Pingon. There were many topics to talk about, and every day was very enjoyable. However, he had only taken 2 steps when he heard Xiao Jin casually ask, Xiangshan, are you not planning to go back to the United States? Mu Xiangshan. Believe it or not, I'll pin the fishing rod on your unfilial granddaughter's head today. Xiao Fei could not help but snicker. Xiao Jin, what are you talking about? It's Grandpa's business whether he wants to go back or not. As a junior, don't interfere. Xiao Jin, oh. Mu Xiangshan snorted and left. Musilian laughed behind him. Xiao Jin, you've learned bad things. How dare you talk about Grandpa? Although Mu Xiangshan and Mu Jinming had conflicts in the past, now that he was back, it meant that they were almost reconciled. However, both of them were the kind of people who did not want to lose face. Neither of them said anything, and this matter passed quietly. Xiao Jin was Mu Xiangshan's heart. Musichu couldn't help but chuckle. Impudent. Musilian shouted, she's still so impudent. She's always been impudent. Even now, she doesn't call me third brother. Xiao Jin, call me big brother. Xiao Jin. Musilian, I knew you would be like this. Forget it, forget it. I won't stoop to your level. The three of them chatted as they walked away. Xiao Fei sighed with emotion when he saw how friendly they were. Who would have thought that half a year ago, his 2 sons still didn't like Xiao Jin? Weren't they getting along quite well now? What happened in the past was in the past. Xiao Fei naturally wanted his family to be happy. Then, she happily made an appointment with her friends to go to the spa. She had the self-awareness of a rich lady. Xiao Jin also went to the cram school with Musichu and Musilian. This cram school was quite famous. The teacher was a famous foreign professor. A class was very expensive. Xiao Jin and Musilian came to join the class because Musichu called the professor and the professor agreed. The 2 students were taught the same class. Neither of them would complain about the lack of money. When they arrived at the classroom, Xiao Jin heard Musichu say, at present, there are a total of 8 students. With the 2 of you, there will be 10. The point was that the professor was extraordinarily expensive. To attend his class, one had to have good grades. Fortunately, Musichu had the best grades here. The professor reluctantly agreed when he spoke. Otherwise, Xiao Jin and Musilian wouldn't have been able to get in. Grades were quite fatal. Chapter 890. Xiao Jin wasn't bad, but he wasn't the best either. Muzillion didn't know anything after 2 months of absence. But overall, he was a little better than Xiao Jin. However, Xiao Jin didn't come to study. The classroom wasn't big. There were more than a dozen desks, some of which were empty. Everyone had a computer in their seat, and there was a projector in the middle. They came in the middle, and there were still a few people who hadn't come. 2 of the other students were mixed-race twin sisters, and some were foreign, but they were all rich and respectable. But when they saw a Muzillion who looked similar to Musachu beside him, everyone was a little surprised. If it weren't for the obvious difference in temperament, they wouldn't be able to tell Muzillion apart if he entered the classroom first. A few straight-A students also surrounded Musachu and expressed their full attention to the fact that he had a twin brother. Muzillion used his ability and winked at the other mixed-race twin sister. Xiao Jin. At this moment, a girl walked into the classroom. In terms of appearance, she was relatively ordinary, at least compared to the good-looking straight-A students in the classroom. The moment she came in, she subconsciously looked at Musachu. When she saw that Musachu was surrounded by people, she was a little surprised. When she took a closer look, she saw Musachu sitting with Muzillion. This time, she couldn't hide her surprise. She probably didn't expect Musachu to have a twin brother. She even leaned closer to Musachu and asked with a smile and a little surprise, "Are you twins too?" "You are." She pointed at Musachu. "You are Chi-Chu." Her tone was very sure. Musachu looked at her and nodded. Muzillion next to him greeted her generously. "Hello, classmate. I am Musachu's younger brother, Muzillion. As you can see, we look the same. We're real twins." He smiled, revealing a standard 8-toothed smile with a hint of evilness. At least on the surface. Why was Muzillion able to deceive so many young ladies? It was all because of his face. When he smiled, he was quite attractive. Before seeing his true colors, it was easy for one's heart to beat faster when looking at his smile. Of course, that was for other girls. Xiao Jin propped up his chin and sized up the girl. She was an ordinary array master who had awakened normally. If it wasn't for the fact that she had thrown the array formation at Musachu, she wouldn't have bothered with this kind of array formation master. Only then did the girl notice Xiao Jin. Actually, she had already seen it long ago. However, the moment she entered the classroom, her gaze subconsciously followed Musachu because she liked him. Now that she saw Xiao Jin, there was obvious shock in her eyes. What followed was amazement, followed by a very, very faint trace of envy. This was normal. When faced with a beautiful girl, many people would have such emotions. "This student, are you new here too?" She smiled at Xiao Jin again. Her smile was hearty and generous, especially when she smiled. It gave people a good impression. Musachu took the opportunity to introduce her. "This is my sister, Xiao Jin. She's also here to listen to the class." "Sister." The girl was even more surprised when she heard that he had a sister. Muzillion and Musachu looked exactly the same, but Xiao Jin didn't look like them. When she still had something to say, the professor arrived. The professor started the class as soon as he arrived, so it wasn't good for her to say anything now. Xiao Jin wasn't bad, but he wasn't the best either. Muzillion didn't know anything after 2 months. But overall, he was a little better than Xiao Jin. However, Xiao Jin didn't come to study. This classroom wasn't big. There were more than 10 desks in total, and some of them were empty. Everyone had a computer in their seat, and there was a projector in the middle. They arrived in the middle, and there were still a few people who hadn't arrived. 2 of the other students were mixed-race twin sisters, and some were foreign, but they were all rich and powerful. However, everyone was a little surprised when they saw a Muzillion who looked similar to Musachu beside him. If it wasn't for the obvious difference in temperament, they wouldn't have been able to tell Musilian apart if he entered the classroom first. A few straight-A students also surrounded Mu Chi-chu and expressed their concern about the fact that he had a twin brother. Mu Chi-chu even used his ability to flirt with the younger sister of a mixed-blood twin. Xiao Jin, at this moment, a girl walked into the classroom. In terms of appearance, she was relatively average. At least compared to the good-looking top students in the classroom, she was average. The moment she came in, she subconsciously looked at Musichu. When she saw that Musichu was surrounded by people, she was a little surprised. When she took a closer look, she saw Musichu sitting with Musilian. This time, she couldn't hide her surprise. She probably didn't expect Musichu to have a twin brother. She even approached Musichu and asked with a smile and a little surprise, "Are you twins too?" "You are." She pointed at Musichu. "You are Chi-chu." Her tone was very certain. Musichu looked at her and nodded. Musilian beside him greeted her generously. "Hello, classmate. I am Musichu's younger brother, Musilian. As you can see, we look the same. We are real twins." He smiled, revealing a standard eight-toothed smile with a hint of evilness. At least this was on the surface. The reason why Musilian could deceive so many girls was because of his face. When he smiled, he was still a little attractive. Before seeing his true face, it was easy to feel the heart beat faster when looking at his smile. Of course, that was for other girls. Xiao Jin held his chin and looked at the girl. She was an ordinary array master who awakened normally. If it wasn't for the fact that she threw the array at Musichu, she usually wouldn't care about this kind of array master. The girl also saw Xiao Jin. In fact, she had seen him a long time ago. It was just that the moment she entered the classroom, her eyes subconsciously followed Musichu first because she liked him. At this moment, when she saw Xiao Jin, there was obvious shock in her eyes. Then, there was a hint of amazement and a hint of envy. This was normal. When facing a beautiful girl, many people would have such emotions. "Classmate, are you new here too?" She smiled at Xiao Jin again. Her smile was bright and generous, especially when she smiled. It gave people a good impression. Musichu took the opportunity to introduce her. "This is my sister, Xiao Jin. She is also here to listen to the class." "Sister." The girl was even more surprised when she heard that he had a sister. Musilian and Musichu looked exactly the same, but Xiao Jin didn't look like them. When she still had something to say, the professor came. The professor started the class as soon as he came, so she couldn't say anything now. Chapter 891. Through the professor's roll call, Xiao Jin learned the girl's name. Yushuya. Yushuya was very attentive in class. However, when the professor asked them to do group communication activities, her eyes would sweep over Musichu from time to time. It was obvious that she liked him. Sometimes she would even glance at Musilian and Xiao Jin. She was just curious about the newcomers. Musilian could barely understand the professor's class. As for Xiao Jin, it was no different from a heavenly book in another sense. Their class was seriously ahead of its time. Xiao Jin was not studying this, so it was normal for him not to understand. When he realized that the professor wanted to pick someone to answer a question, his eyes were looking at him. Xiao Jin used his rare ability to divert his gaze. There were things that even the big shots did not know how to do. It was better not to force such a cruel thing to happen. Of course, the professor did not know. The professor only thought that those who came here to listen to the class would definitely be able to keep up with the progress. He did not think that someone would come here to mess around. The duration of a class was 2 hours. Although Xiao Jin could not listen to it, he was not impatient. Basically, the time in a days passed very quickly. After the class ended, everyone began to pack their things. Then, everyone realized that Xiao Jin did not say a word during the class. He did not actively communicate with the group. The professor did not even ask. Everyone thought that it might be Xiao Jin's first day of class, so he was not familiar with it. They did not know that this was also her last class. After it ended, Yushiya glanced over. She could not find a chance to talk to Mizuchu, so she could only pack her things and leave regretfully. Mizuchu said to Xiao Jin, "I'll take you guys to eat. What do you want to eat for lunch?" Xiao Jin said, "Anything is fine." Mizuchu then brought them over to eat. Muzillion clamored for barbecued meat, so he brought them over to eat barbecued meat. Their classes were in the morning, and Mizuchu was free in the afternoon. Usually, he would have to do other studies, but today he was free. Mizuchu planned to take Muzillion and Xiao Jin to play. During the meal, Xiao Jin felt that Yushiya was following them. However, she was very careful. She was always in the shop next door to ensure that Mizuchu and the others did not sense her presence. She was a formation master, so following her like this was nothing. However, Xiao Jin felt that this person was really persistent. It seemed like she liked Mizuchu a lot. However, she still didn't agree with putting the bewitching array on Mizuchu. If Yushiya continued to act, Xiao Jin would teach her a lesson. After all, she didn't do anything that offended karma. It seemed like she was really infatuated with Mizuchu. However, Mizuchu obviously didn't look like he could like Yushiya. Eating the delicious barbecued meat, Mizuchu even asked Xiao Jin, "Do you see anything?" During class today, he also noticed Xiao Jin. However, Xiao Jin didn't pay much attention to anyone. Instead, he took a few more glances at Yushiya in the beginning. As an older brother, he also had sharp observation skills. He just didn't know why. Yushiya was an ordinary girl in the class. Mizuchu knew that she was also here to study, but other than her name, he didn't know anything else. In general, he just didn't pay attention to her because she had nothing to do with him. When he occasionally saw her, he would just say hello. Yushiya had a good relationship with the other people in the class. Chapter 892. Xiao Jin smiled and said, "Nothing." Muzillion ate the barbecue and asked, "What did you see?" He ate happily and listened carefully in class. Because Mizuchu was next to him, he would be glared at and scolded by Mizuchu if he didn't pay attention. The lower end of the food chain wasn't just for show. Xiao Jin and Mizuchu both said nothing. Xiao Jin's smile suddenly froze. She felt a cold and sinister surveillance again. It seemed to have appeared some time ago. At the same time, her phone vibrated. She tilted her head and looked at it. There was a strange message on it. "I haven't seen you for a few days. You are more beautiful than before, like a goddess in heaven. Come and be my work of art. You will be my most perfect work." This message combined with the other message Xiao Jin received some time ago had a miraculous effect. She caught Ping Yuan's father at that time, but later she felt that Ping Yuan's father and the person who sent the message were not the same person. Ping Yuan's father just wanted her to be Ping Yuan's bride, but this message seemed to want to kill Xiao Jin. It was full of the feeling of a perverted murderer. And she had already felt that the other party was in the mall. They were eating barbecue in the mall. The cold gaze came from not far away. Xiao Jin didn't turn around directly. She could easily see who the other party was through the array. There was no need to alert the enemy. She was too lazy to drag it out with this person. She simply said, "I have something to do later. I will leave first." You guys eat slowly. Where are you going? Musichu frowned and said, I will take you out to play in the afternoon. Xiao Jin said, I have something to do. Someone asked me out. Forget it today. We will go together next time. She picked up her phone and left with a smile. Musilian knew that she often ran around. In addition, he knew her identity, but his brother didn't. At this moment, his heart was abnormally inflated. He felt that he had grasped the secret of the universe. He pulled his brother and said, Oh, she wants to run around. If we don't care about her, how can we care about her? She's going to do something big. However, as soon as Xiao Jin left, Musichu turned to look at Musilian. Do you know something? Is there a secret between you and Xiao Jin? Musilian almost choked on a mouthful of roast meat. Finally, he swallowed it down and smiled awkwardly. Brother, what are you talking about? What secrets do I have with her? Don't talk nonsense and tarnish my innocence for no reason. He hadn't decided if he should tell his family about the things that had destroyed his worldview. He didn't expect Musichu to ask about it now. You came back with Xiao Jin a few times. It was the same the day before yesterday. You said that you met at the airport. Mom and the others will believe you. I don't believe you. Where did you go with her? Also, I don't think you are worth Xiao Jin bringing you along. Musilian, brother, what you said is true. It's a little offensive. I advise you to take it back. Musichu's expression was serious. So according to my speculation, you and Xiao Jin must have experienced something. You can't hide it from me. How do you know that Xiao Jin is going to do something big? You know what she is doing, right? Musilian, he felt that his brother's IQ had improved by leaps and bounds. He smiled awkwardly and said, Brother, I don't want to say. Let me think about it. Musichu's face was cold. Say it. Otherwise, I will tell Mom that you didn't come home last night playing games. Musilian. Chapter 893. Yushiya was originally following Musichu next door. She liked Musichu and wanted to know everything about him. There was nothing much to say about that. She had never liked anyone before, but Musichu was someone she was very attracted to. She knew that she wasn't pretty and didn't have any merits that could attract Musichu's attention. However, she had a secret that no one else knew about, and only her sister knew about it. She had a special ability. She didn't know what it was, but she knew that she had it since she was young. She could use her ability to make Musichu fall in love with her. She didn't dare to use it usually because her sister didn't allow it. She was afraid that her ability would be discovered and sent to the laboratory as a test subject. But this time, she couldn't help it. If she didn't use her ability, Musichu wouldn't even look at her. But what surprised her was that her ability failed when she put an array on Musichu. It didn't work at all. She really couldn't figure out the reason. She had secretly used it a few times when she was young, and it was all useful. Nothing major happened. She just wanted Muchichu to pay a little more attention to her, and that was enough. But even that didn't work. She didn't understand when she was confused, so she followed Musichu to figure out the reason. However, she saw something unexpected. She was sitting diagonally across the mall. On the seat outside the washroom, there was a man wearing a baseball cap. The brim of his cap was pressed very low. He pretended to look at his phone, but his eyes inadvertently looked next door. As an array master, she had sharper senses. Her intuition told her that the man was spying on someone. It wasn't until Xiao Jin got up and walked out that she saw the man look at Xiao Jin and then get up to follow her. Xiao Jin didn't seem to know anything. Yushiya's face paled. Xiao Jin was Musichu's sister. She had a bad premonition. Because of her innate ability, she felt a very uncomfortable aura from that man. She couldn't describe it. It was like a thick smell of blood. The reason why he described it this way was because his sister was a special police officer. She once had to kill a murderer during a mission, and because of the nature of her work, she often brought it with her. She had the smell of blood on her, but ordinary people couldn't smell it. She had relied on her intuition. How could an ordinary person have such a strong smell of blood? Her intuition told her that something was wrong. She wanted to inform Mizuchu, but she couldn't find a reason. Was she going to say that she suspected that someone was following Chao Jin? That person was so far away. What if he alerted the enemy? What if he ran away and was in danger again? Yushiya looked at Mizuchu, who was next door, and then looked at Chao Jin, who had already walked out of the elevator. She paused for a moment, then stood up and hurriedly called the waiter, "Bill, please." After paying the bill, she chased after him. She wasn't afraid because of the influence of her sister, who was a police officer. Also, she was an array master, so she was confident if she encountered danger. Moreover, she was such a cold girl. She didn't dare to imagine what she would look like if she encountered danger, nor could she imagine what she would look like if something happened to her. She kept a distance. She didn't need to follow Chao Jin. She only needed to follow that man. Seeing that he was following Chao Jin all the way, her intuition was even more accurate. With her ability as an array master, she could stay very far away until she followed him onto the subway. Chapter 894. Chao Jin seemed to be walking aimlessly. She took the subway to another square. There was a developed area nearby, so there were quite a few people. After Chao Jin entered, Yushiya saw the man she was following take something out of his bag. He tapped it a few times. After that, Chao Jin stayed in the square. Yushiya hid far away and saw the man sitting there. After a while, he drove a car over. The driver got out of the car and he sat in the car. Yushiya didn't know what he wanted to do, so she could only wait. This wait lasted for 3 hours. Chao Jin actually went in to watch a movie. When she walked to the side of the road, she saw the car. Her target was obvious. When she came to the side of the road, she didn't walk in the direction of the subway. The driver stuck his head out and showed an ordinary face, even a little friendly. "Miss, do you want a ride?" Chao Jin looked at him and smiled lightly. "How much to Qingqing district?" As if to make her believe him, the driver said, "I drive a sports car. You can call me directly using the taxi app. It'll cost you as much as it says." "Okay." When Yushiya saw Chao Jin get in the car, her eyes widened. She knew him. That was impossible. She had been following Chao Jin on the way out. She didn't think that Chao Jin knew him. However, Chao Jin got in the car. She hesitated for a moment and sent a message to her sister. She saw the license plate number of the car and sent it to her sister for investigation. Her sister was probably busy now. They were recently investigating a serial murder case and didn't even have time to eat. She didn't dare to call her sister casually. She could only hope that her sister would see the news as soon as possible. She should be fine, right? With that thought, she called a taxi and said to the driver, "Follow the car in front." Because she was especially careful and vigilant, the driver understood immediately. "Miss, catching cheating boyfriends." Yushiya, yes, drivers these days all had the heart to be secret agents. Hearing this, he made an okay gesture to Yushiya. "Miss, I'm a professional. Don't worry. I won't let the other party find out." Yushiya, she always felt that the driver was more dramatic than her. The car slowly followed. The car kept running and ran very far. Soon, it began to appear on a remote road. Yushia threw an array over and was shocked to find that Xiao Jin was lying in the back seat. She had fainted. There was knockout powder in the car. At this time, the car had already reached a remote road. She was afraid that if she followed too closely, she would be discovered by the other party. She took out her phone and pretended to have a GPS. She used a formation to monitor the driver so that he would be far behind. She ensured that he would not leave the formation range and would not be discovered by the other party. However, using the array formation in such a manner was not something she could handle, and her face quickly turned pale. The driver thought that she was upset because she had caught a mistress, so he started to chatter. "Miss, you don't have to be sad. It's hard to find a three-legged toad in this world, but aren't two-legged men everywhere? Listen to me. After we catch them, we'll beat your shameless boyfriend first, then the mistress. Then, we'll call the police and expose them. We'll let them know how evil society is and let society teach them a lesson." Yushia. Yes. You're right. Don't be sad. Look at you. When it comes to relationships, it's all like this. Chapter 895. When Xiao Jin got in the car, she smelled a strange smell in the car. She guessed that it was probably drugs, so she passed out in a short while and lay in the back seat. The driver saw her in the rearview mirror and showed a smug and evil smile. Xiao Jin was still wondering why the murderer's tricks were still the same as on TV. If something really happened to her, there were surveillance cameras everywhere. How could she be so confident that she could get out? Moreover, she could sense that Yushia had followed her and had even thrown away an array formation. For a moment, she didn't know how to describe this little girl. She said that it was immoral for her to attack Musichu, but now she seemed to feel that she was in danger and followed. She was just an ordinary array master. She threw the array and observed the driver. She probably used up too much of her ability and couldn't hold on for long. In fact, she was right. If she really met a murderer, if Yushia didn't follow and chose to call the police, there might be other accidents. She could also use the array to make something happen to the car, but she was afraid that the murderer would do something to Xiao Jin in desperation. Yushia's ability wasn't enough to kill people from such a long distance. Besides, she had never killed anyone before. But soon, the car stopped. It was actually a waste station outside the city. How to say it, it was really a good place to unload goods. There were no surveillance cameras here, and there was only one waste station. In addition to the stench, Xiao Jin already heard the sound of a girl crying when she arrived. Just like what Ping Yuan's father did last time, there were also girls imprisoned here. However, there was also the smell of blood. More than one life had been taken. Yushia found that the car had stopped and immediately asked the driver to stop. She asked him to wait here and ran over on foot. She stopped the array. She didn't have enough power to use it. At this moment, she was starting to feel dizzy because of the excessive consumption. She was afraid that something would happen, so she could only carefully move along the waste station. She called the police while calling the police. After all, she now knew the place. Just as Xiao Jin was about to make a move on the driver, she discovered traces of another array formation. There was an array master here. He didn't think so in the past, but why were array masters everywhere now? She frowned slightly and chose to wait and see. She closed her eyes and pretended to faint. The driver just gave her a perverted smile and didn't do anything else. He picked her up and carried her into the depths of the waste station. Xiao Jin set up a transparent array formation to isolate him from contact. Inside, there was a huge warehouse and a huge, junkyard basement. When they went down, the environment was dark. When they reached the bottom, they could see everything at a glance. There was a lot of furniture and dozens of cages. In each cage, there was a girl. The only difference was that 2 of them were completely dead and emitted a foul stench. As for the others, they were all covered in dirt. When they saw the man carrying a girl down, they were so scared that they began to tremble, but they did not dare to scream. Outside the cage, there seemed to be a huge circle drawn. Inside, there was a complicated pattern. In the center of the pattern sat a woman that was difficult to describe with words. She only had a woman's face. Her lower body was a mass of rotten meat. When she saw the man carrying Qiao Jin down and saw Qiao Jin's face, her eyes lit up. Perfect, too perfect, I want her face. Chapter 896. The man smiled viciously and said, "You want her face?" "Sure, but you have to wait until I'm done with the artwork." The woman's eyes circled around him, and her voice was like a venomous snake. "If you use her as a work of art, won't I have no face to exchange it? Where did you find such a top-notch woman?" "Top-notch, right? I've been waiting for a long time. Today, I finally have a chance." As he spoke, he had already carried Qiao Jin. There was a chair in front of the woman. He placed Qiao Jin on the chair. Then, his gaze turned tender. "Look at this face." The woman's eyes flashed, and the rotten flesh on her lower body seemed to move. The scene could not be described with the word terrifying. After a while, her tone seemed to become strange. "Don't you like my face just the same?" The man turned his head, glanced at her, and then looked at her body. There was no fear in his eyes, only a hint of disgust. Then, he said coldly, "Don't you think this face deserves her body? There are so many women in it. Why don't you pick one? You know how to pick the good one." The woman screamed, "You'd better not make me angry. You haven't been caught yet because of me. Be careful or I'll make you suffer." The man's eyes became more ferocious. It seemed that the 2 of them were having an internal conflict. However, a few seconds later, he turned around and looked at Qiao Jin, who was lying on the chair in a coma. He said, "It's really perfect." His tone was bone-chilling, and his hand was about to touch Qiao Jin's soft, porcelain-like face. Unexpectedly, the woman who was supposed to be unconscious suddenly opened her eyes coldly. It was so sudden that he was startled. However, he wasn't afraid. He just paused and smiled, "You're awake." However, in the next second, he felt a huge force coming at his abdomen. It was like a boulder had appeared out of nowhere and smashed him to the ground. "Paw!" He let out a painful howl. His body couldn't stand the sudden impact. Qiao Jin didn't move at all. She only tilted her head. Her calm and watery eyes contained a trace of sharpness as she looked at the woman on the ground. After a while, she smiled and said, "You've been corroded to this extent." Her tone was so gentle, as if it was the voice of an angel coming from the sky. However, it was like an invisible net that gradually wrapped around people's bodies, strangling their necks and suffocating them. The woman stared at Qiao Jin and said, She wasn't an ordinary person." When she realized this, her expression suddenly changed and she let out a shrill scream. Several arms made of human flesh emerged from the pile of rotten flesh beneath her. They were indeed human arms, but they didn't look normal. They were so long that even the tallest person in the world couldn't have them. They looked like spiders, thin and long. They surged toward Qiao Jin. However, when his arm came into contact with Qiao Jin's face, it was as if he had touched a solid wall. The woman screamed in pain when her arms were broken. Chapter 897. The whole scene only lasted 2 seconds. The man on the ground was smashed to the point that he couldn't react at all. The other girls locked in the cage also let out earth-shattering screams at this time. They let out shrill screams. They were terrified to the extreme, and their eyes were full of despair and fear. There were even some who couldn't distinguish between reality and illusion. Even in this situation, their heads were buried in their knees. Their bodies were trembling, and they couldn't make a sound. This was because they were terrified to the extreme and had been ravaged for a long time. Now, they didn't have the sanity of a normal person. The screams were ear-piercing. Xiao Jin looked around, and his eyes gradually turned cold. Yushuya had already sneaked into the waste station upstairs. Perhaps the man didn't close the door when he came in, so she heard the screams. She rushed over almost without thinking, but she still knew to cover herself with a protective array. This was the little strength left in her body. At least, it could ensure that the man wouldn't attack her with anything. The door of the underground darkroom wasn't closed tightly. It opened with a twist of the doorknob, and a staircase went straight down. Yushuya walked down carefully and found that there was still light down there. She didn't need a phone or a flashlight to illuminate it. When she went down the stairs, she already smelled a rancid smell in the air. She had never smelled this rancid smell before. It came in so suddenly that she almost couldn't control it. She felt a violent wave of nausea in her heart. She covered her mouth and couldn't resist the urge to vomit. It was really too disgusting. What a disgusting smell. She didn't dare to imagine what was down there. Just now, Xiao Jin was carried down. The rancid smell was accompanied by a stench, like human excrement. There were many other smells mixed together, indicating how long it had been since this place was cleaned and how terrifying it was. At this moment, the tip of her nose suddenly smelled fresh air. It was as if all the smell had dissipated. Yushuya took a deep breath and felt that she was alive again. However, when she stabilized her mind and looked, she was stunned by the hellish scene in front of her. She was an array master, but she had never seen such a situation. Even if her sister often went through a hail of bullets, it wasn't as exciting as this thing in front of her. She didn't know what to call this thing. She could only call it a toy. She had a woman's face, but the lower half of her body was a lump of rotten flesh. There were even a few oddly shaped thin and long arms growing out of this lump of flesh, like the arms of a spider. At this moment, the woman was still howling. Her arms and rotten flesh were rolling. If this scene was filmed live, it would definitely be the #1 horror movie. She had never seen such a thing before, and the visual impact was too great. The nausea she felt from the smell just now was completely overshadowed by the thing in front of her. Unable to hold it in any longer, Yushuya leaned against the wall and vomited. Xiao Jin, forget it, she dared to rush down, her courage was commendable. Looking at the woman in front of him, Xiao Jin waved his hand and destroyed her. The woman's body began to tremble, and her rotten flesh began to melt. Gradually, her entire body turned into a pile of thick, unknown liquid. At the very least, he looked much more pleasing to the eye than before. And the perverted murderer on the ground seemed to have just reacted. He raised his head and stared at Xiao Jin. In his eyes, there was no longer the infatuation from before. Instead, there was a hint of hatred. Chapter 898. Xiao Jin couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. She looked around. The girls who met her gaze all had looks of despair in their eyes. They were probably filled with hope. However, after countless times of hope, this hope had turned into despair. Now, even though they had seen Xiao Jin use a strange method to eliminate the terrifying monster woman and the murderer lying on the ground, they didn't dare to show any hope. Not to mention, some of them had been tortured to the point of insanity. You are not human. The voice of the man on the ground was like that of a venomous snake. His eyes were wide open, seemingly unwilling. Xiao Jin glanced at him indifferently. That glance was like sweeping through a mass of useless things, like air that could be seen at any time. She walked around and waved her hand gently. All the cages were opened. The sound of the cages being opened frightened the girls in the cages. A few of them screamed almost immediately. Xiao Jin faced two of them. She gently put her index finger between her lips and said, "Shiv." This soft hiss seemed to have a soothing effect. The few people who had been screaming slowly quieted down. However, tears flowed out of their eyes. Because they were too emotional, they kept hiccuping. However, their cries gradually stopped. Yushuya almost vomited the bile in her stomach. Finally, she had the courage to look down. When she saw the woman who had disappeared, she was shocked. Then, she saw the man on the ground slowly get up. He pulled out a small knife from his pocket and directly attacked Xiao Jin. "Be careful!" Yushuya screamed. She immediately stretched out her hand to use her ability to stop him. The man's knife didn't stab down. It was as though there was an air wall behind Xiao Jin. He stabbed the air above Xiao Jin's head and couldn't stab down anymore. So much so that his hands were trembling, which made him look somewhat comical. He opened his eyes and looked at the girl whose back was facing him. Then, he turned around with an indifferent expression. "Do you know why I didn't kill you?" Her voice was like the most beautiful sound of nature. It was a little cool, but it also made people feel mesmerized. Xiao Jin smiled. "The police are here. We have to give them an explanation." Yushuya looked at this scene in shock. She also saw the man who couldn't stab her knife down. She said in shock, You're actually not an ordinary person." With such an ability, it was obvious that Xiao Jin was not an ordinary person. Yushuya had never thought that Mizuchu's sister was actually a girl with abnormal abilities. Xiao Jin turned to look at her. "Why did you follow me?" Yushuya was speechless. Why did she follow them? Of course, it was because she was afraid that something would happen to Xiao Jin. In the end, when she saw how effortlessly Xiao Jin dealt with it, she instantly knew that she had been overthinking things. Before she could say anything, Xiao Jin continued, "You're kind-hearted, so why did you use the bewitching formation on Mizuchu?" Yushuya's face instantly turned red. She didn't know what the bewitching formation was. She just used her ability based on her instincts. However, Xiao Jin's words were clearly telling her that she knew what she did to Mizuchu. This was a rather embarrassing question. Chapter 899. This kind of embarrassment was for Yushuya. Using her ability on Mizuchu was not something to be proud of. She knew that she looked ordinary and everything was ordinary. She just wanted to attract Mizuchu's attention, so she secretly used a little of her ability. She was surprised to find that the ability she used had no effect at all. Mizuchu still ignored her and did not even show the slightest bit of attention to her. She thought that it was because her ability could not be used on others. However, she secretly used it when she was young and there was no problem. Now that Xiao Jin had exposed her in front of everyone, she felt ashamed. She stuttered and could not say a word. Xiao Jin said lightly, "You did not do anything wrong, so let's forget about it. Since you have the ability, do what you should do. If you attract other people's attention and are targeted, not everyone will let you go like I did." "I'm sorry." Yushuya subconsciously apologized. Xiao Jin said, "The one you should apologize to is not me, but Chi Chu." It's just that Chi-Chu does not know what kind of existence you are, so let's just pretend this never happened. Okay. Yushuya could not ask for more. She was really afraid that this kind of thing would be known by Mizuchu. What would Mizuchu think of her? Yushuya did a little wrong, but she fell into a superstitious belief in her ability. He could still see that the bottom line in her heart was pure and kind. There were always times when people were confused. Xiao Jin let her go this time. When Yushuya saw that the terrifying woman was gone, she carefully walked down and looked at Xiao Jin. Then, she looked at the man who couldn't move at all and was holding a knife like a clown. She could roughly guess what had happened here. Then she saw the surrounding cages and the girls in the cages. With the dim light in the basement, Yushuya saw the miserable situation and was stunned. She had never seen such a cruel scene in her life. A girl was curled up in the cage, eating, drinking, and defecating inside. Her clothes were so dirty that they could not be looked at. In the stinky environment, most of them hugged their knees and buried their necks in their knees. It was a gesture of self-protection. They looked at her and Xiao Jin with frightened eyes, as if the slightest movement was enough to make them panic. There were also 2 girls in the cages, lying on their backs without any movement. 2. Terrifying. Yushuya trembled, and her eyes turned red. It was because of the unfortunate girls in front of him, and also because of the shock of this scene. Her sister was a special police officer. Although her job was very dangerous, she had protected Yushuya very well since she was young. She had never faced such a cruel scene. The phone in her pocket vibrated slightly again. She took it out and saw that it was a call from her sister. Now that everything was fine, Yushuya picked up the phone directly. Before she could speak, her sister's voice rang out like a machine gun, "Don't move. The car plate number you gave was reported missing this morning. Where are you now? Give me the address. Don't mess around by yourself." Yushuya's voice trembled. "Sister, it's fine now. I'm in a very scary place now. Bring your colleagues over." Her sister fell silent. "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.